second sun for the second time.
Folks, Sam Seder here. This is the live broadcast of the Majority Report. And as you probably have heard, there's a bit of a YouTube apocalypse that has been going on. Many news and politics channels have lost their advertising because of an algorithm that Google has implemented as a function of ads showing up on hate-filled channels. Well, we got caught up in that, and it doesn't look like it's going to be resolved. So we need your help. You've probably heard from other channels that they're asking people to donate to a Patreon site. We are asking the same so that we can operate this YouTube feed without a cost to us. I mean, we don't look at YouTube as a huge revenue maker for us, but we need your help so that we're not losing money on it. So head over to our Patreon site. Here is the URL. We need your help. Just a couple of bucks, $2-3 a month would really help us out. Thanks so much and enjoy the show.
Majority Report with Sam Seder. It's time to look in the mirror, America. Do you like what you see?
I keep referring to Obama as the magic Negro.
Do you like what you see now?
Well, suck on this.
It's just a mirror, America.
Shared sacrifice by everybody.
What could it do to you except reflect your image?
I did nothing wrong at the Minneapolis airport.
The Majority Report.
Far more credible to me than PBS and Frontline.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, May 4th, 2017. My name is Sam Seder. This is the four-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live. Steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America. Downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Sheelah Kolhatkar, writer with The New Yorker, on her book Black Edge. It's the saga of Stephen A. Cohen, the notorious hedge funder. Also on the program today, as we speak, the House is getting ready to vote on a repeal and replace bill that appears to have Republican support despite the fact that no one really knows what's in it, except for amendments which will allow not only insurance on the exchanges to be destroyed, but your employer health insurance to be destroyed. Also on the program today, like I say, lifetime limits and loss of essential benefits appear to be in the offing, but also millions upon millions of people will lose health insurance, including special ed kids. Meanwhile, the People's Budget is released by the Congressional Progressive Caucus, while the Republicans plot to offer some quick cuts to Medicare to make room for tax siphoning by the wealthy. Democrats' autopsy still buried. And Jason Chaffetz wakes up, wants to curb Barack Obama's presidential pension. Meanwhile, a woman convicted for laughing at Jeff Sessions.
Who has the last laugh now, madam?
And Republicans vote to allow your boss to decide if you get time and a half or vacation credit when you work overtime. Yeah, I know. Elections have consequences, folks. But at least some of you feel proud about yourself for voting for someone with a green energy plan. I don't know. It had been a couple of days since I said that.
Yeah, that was clearly an itch.
Here is, and I actually wanted the clip going before that because we could see the line of people, if you have that, of congressmen who hadn't read the bill leading up to that. You know, there was, when I went to Glenn Beck's 1128 or 1228 or the day after, I can't remember exactly what they called. He called his Tea Party parties on the Washington Mall back in the day. And I think I released some of those videos, some of the choice moments where it became quite apparent to everybody there that there was literally no people of color anywhere at the place, that the one guy that they had actually was walking around with a sign and his buddy saying, "Do I look racist? Because I'm here with a black guy."
Glenn's rallies were very safe, also anti-racist.
I spoke to, and in fact, Matthew Film Guy was with me. He was the one, I think, holding the camera, if I remember correctly. I think it was. I spoke to probably 40 or 50 people, maybe more, but within, for 5 minutes at a time. I was there for a long time. And almost every single person complained about the length of the Affordable Care Act and the fact that no one read the bill. That was the big thing. No one read the bill. We should have a law that you can only have laws that are only 3 pages long, and no one read the bill. Nobody knows what's in it.
Totally unfair.
And even Nancy Pelosi's famous, nobody knows the bill, until they read it, proclamation. If you read that in context, it's going to be, it really has more to do with we're going to find out what things work and what don't work. She wasn't talking literally. In this instance, ladies and gentlemen, literally no one has read the bill. It was released 15 hours ago. It has not been scored by the Congressional Budget Office. So no one knows what the implications of the bill are, except for one that are sort of quite obvious, and we will get to that. You're going to lose essential benefits. You're going to lose lifetime limits. And not only that, it gets worse. Because under this waiver provision, because in the passage of the Affordable Care Act, it was no longer necessary to have boundaries between states and their regulatory regimes as to whether or not in one state you could allow lifetime limits or annual limits, and another state decides that we're not going to allow that, and there's only a couple of those states. Well, in the passage of the Affordable Care Act, those walls in between the states essentially were dropped. And now the problem is going to be, if I'm an insurance company, I can actually get a waiver based upon another state's laws. So if another state, and I have no business there, says you can offer employer insurance without having to worry about imposing, you can impose lifetime limits. I, as an employer, can actually cite that state and just simply run my stuff through there. It's a disaster. But here is an NBC reporter asking all sorts of Republican congressmen if they have read the bill. Remember, this is the worst thing you can do, is not read a bill, according to conservatives.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Congressman, have you read the bill yet?
Yeah, as far as yes, I've
What happened? Froze. Let's rewind it. You mean as far as the amendment?
You mean as relation to the bill itself is what you're saying.
You're talking by read the bill, you mean the amendment part.
When you professor, when you say do you reading?
As far as yes, I've
Oh boy!
Sorry,
all right,
guys.
We don't have that.
The point is, they didn't read the bill.
But all right, well, let's just go. We'll add that later. But then that same reporter basically has this to offer in terms of Shimkus from Illinois. If he read the health care bill, this was his response, according to this reporter.
One of the most interesting responses I had was from Congressman Shimkus of Illinois. Republican Democratic baseball game. It's an annual tradition. I asked him if he'd read the bill. He said he just came from baseball practice, Chris.
Wow is right. Yeah.
Kind of got some things to do here. Sorry.
Am I really supposed to turn that around in 15 hours? No.
Look, I'm a Republican. I don't need to read a bill. You tell me it will make life worse for most people and makes things better for insurance companies. I'm going to vote for it. So, anyways, back to baseball.
Now, I know the knee-jerk reaction here is to assume this is not going to pass in the Senate, but it's not quite that easy. Once the bill goes over to the Senate basically, because it doesn't have to initiate it, they can basically create whatever they want for all intents and purposes. And then these bills go to conference, and they hammer out a bill that they think is going to appeal to everybody. It's quite possible once it goes to conference, they won't be able to. But, let's look at what we're watching here. They have already taken the vote. In the House, they have already taken the vote. I'm saying once it gets to conference. So the cost of them voting for it again is basically nil. So it's not so black and white, folks. It very well could be something that passes, that we end up getting something. It may not be exactly this, but once all of these so-called moderates have voted for this, even though they don't know what's in it, they don't know, and they're about to realize they may have made a big mistake in terms of 2018. Nevertheless, the price of losing health care for millions upon millions of Americans, the price of losing the patient protections, the lack of lifetime caps, the lack of annual caps, the package of essential benefits, the pre-existing conditions. That's a big price to pay, even to take back the House in 2018. This is really problematic. Do we want to play that clip? All right, here it is. Here they are. not knowing what's in the bill.
Congressman, have you read the bill yet?
Yeah, as far as yes, I've read the bill. You talking about the latest Upton, the latest Upton?
I'm talking about the entire
Yes, we
bill.
have. Yes.
Okay, wait. Did you notice that? Yeah, you like that? Okay. Are you talking about the latest Upton Amendment? No, the entire bill. Oh, yes, we have.
Totally.
We have. I'm speaking for me and.
No, we do.
Oh, I thought I was talking about all the guys standing by. I gotta go.
Concerned about voting on this bill? Congressman, have you read the health care bill? Morning, Congressman. Have you had time to read the health care bill?
We're still working on it.
Hey, gentlemen, have you read this bill, Congressman? Congressman, have you read the bill? No, we're in a hurry. We'll be back.
We're in a hurry.
Congressman, have you read the health care bill?
Yeah, there you go. So you got one. I have. One, you mean Upton Amendment? We have. And then just a bunch of guys who ignore them. They're going to be awful surprised that they screwed over so many of their constituents. All right, we got to take a quick break. We're going to change gears here and talk about unmitigated greed on Wall Street. What's old is, well, probably still new again, but...
And what's a great guy is still a great guy.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. Pleasure to welcome to the program Sheelah Kolhatkar. She's a staff writer for the New Yorker magazine. Her new book, Black Edge, Inside Information, Dirty Money, and the Quest to Bring Down the Most Wanted Man on Wall Street. This book, of course, is about Stephen A. Cohen of SAC, I guess, Capital. Sheelah, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right. So, I mean, for folks who don't know what a hedge fund is, give us a sense of what a hedge fund is and where it fits in terms of the broader Wall Street, I guess, as an institution.
Well, hedge funds really started many decades ago, and they were originally conceived to be these boutique investment pools for very wealthy investors where they could park sort of a piece of their money, and it would be shielded from swings in the market because the hedge fund manager would be buying stocks, and they would also be shorting stocks, which is betting against the stocks. It's sort of a risky activity that most investors don't do. So that's how they started, this little boutique service. They charge very high fees, very lightly regulated because they were only taking money from very wealthy, sophisticated investors. And what happened over the last few decades is they were so enormously successful at sort of exploiting the market, exploiting any information advantage they could have in their investing, And over time, the most successful ones were posting returns year after year of 30, 40, 50%. The people running these hedge funds became enormously wealthy and powerful, and some of the funds grew into the multi-billion dollars. So they're actually now a very strong influence in the market. People don't even realize it, but many of the newest billionaires who have been created over the last few decades are hedge fund managers. Stephen A. Cohen is one. Robert Mercer, who's Donald Trump's primary financial backer, is another very good example of this. Paul Singer, Bill Ackman, and many of these people have so much money now that they're exerting a lot of influence in politics. And their funds are so large, or these huge pools of private capital, they can actually take big stakes in public companies and sort of direct those companies to do what they wish. They do a lot of lobbying in Washington. And it's sort of the first time we've seen this scale of wealth created for a group of people who actually, didn't build companies that actually made products. They employ relatively few people. And they do bring liquidity to the market, which means that they do help kind of drive stock prices to more realistic levels because they're in there trading every day. But, a lot of people don't understand what value they really bring to the economy.
I mean, do they really bring any significant value to the economy? I mean, what is your sense of that? I mean, you used to work as a hedge fund. You've been writing about them. Particularly, we can talk about the broader financialization and products and the financialization of our economy. But, I mean, for the billions of dollars that they create for themselves, short of, maybe some landscaping outfits in Greenwich, and the local building supply stores. And maybe not even local, right? I mean, Italian marble that they're flying into Greenwich. But can you really point to a large benefit, even commensurate with the wealth that they've made to the broader economy?
I think it is hard to make the argument that they have really contributed as much as they have taken out. Now, I will say, in their defense, their argument would be, well, we manage money for a lot of pension funds, and that's true. Pension funds, especially as they become under more pressure to find returns to pay for retiree benefits and so on. A lot of them have piled into hedge funds. Some of them have made a lot of money through hedge fund investments. Many of them have lost money too. So, that argument is a bit mixed. And there's some small faction of the hedge fund world that has played a very active role in detecting frauds in the market. And Enron is a very famous example. The widespread fraud at Enron was first detected by a hedge fund. So some of them are incentivized to kind of, research really intensively and scope out problems at companies that are lying about their earnings. That is a very positive role. But it's true that at the same time, a lot of their compensation is taxed at a much lower rate than people who are earning salaries. And, many of the most successful hedge fund managers are very involved in lobbying for even lower taxes. This is a big issue for a lot of them. And they create relatively few jobs when you compare it to the money that they're generating every year. So I think it is a tough argument. And, now we're seeing a lot of them really having an impact on big public companies in the U.S., and it's not always positive. And most recently, a hedge fund took a big stake in Whole Foods. And you can kind of predict what that hedge fund is going to tell Whole Foods to do. It's going to tell them to reduce their employees.
Well, wait a second. Let me stop before we get to that, because I just want to talk about, when we hear about the carried interest tax loophole. This is who we're talking about, right? I mean, this is not even capital gains versus wage tax difference, right? I mean, this isn't the run of the mill. We value money. The money you make from money over the money that you make from actually working. This even goes beyond that, right? Tell people what the carried interest tax loophole is. Yeah,
well, so that carried interest tax applies mainly to hedge fund and private equity fund partnerships. And it is a much lower tax rate that is intended, at least in theory, to incentivize investment. And of course, we want to motivate job creators or business financiers to kind of invest money in businesses and job creation. But in fact, what ends up happening is that at the end of the year, hedge fund managers typically, most of their compensation comes from a 20%, sometimes 50% cut of the profits generated by their fund each year. And a lot of people would argue that that money, whatever investments they had, those were not really risks they were taking to finance businesses. Those were kind of passive stakes in companies by holding their shares or whatever it was. And a lot of that money, which can add up to hundreds of millions of dollars for the most successful, biggest hedge fund managers, ends up being taxed at this 15% rate, which is much lower than certainly the rate that I pay and most people I know, and it seems unfair, and it's remarkable to see all the flip-flopping that goes on. I mean, everyone who goes into Washington seems to argue that this is an unfair tax rate, but they're unable to kind of do anything about it. And that must be
unwilling. I think it's probably more accurate. I mean, they're able. They are certainly able to. Right. They decide not to because they're getting their funding there. I mean, so there is no. In other words, there's not even a pretense really with that money that you're building anything any more than one could argue. I'm investing in people's jobs by going to Vegas and losing money at the blackjack table. Or making money at the blackjack table. I mean,
there may be some small percentage of their investment that falls legitimately into that category, but it's a small subset. And,
right.
And most of the money they're making, really, it is just inexplicable to me why it would not be taxed at the same rate as everyone else.
All right, so that's and lastly, okay, so we have a sense of who hedge funders are. But and before we get into the story of Stephen Cohen, and I'm fascinated by how much his story is an anomaly or is really just sort of on a spectrum or a matter of degree in terms of what the hedge funder business model is. But within the context of the 2008 financial crisis, which we associate more, I guess, specifically with investment bankers and the mortgage industry. And where do they fit in that taxonomy on Wall Street? I mean, where do hedge funders, bump up against like Goldman Sachs or, and they're, selling derivatives or, securities of securities?
Well, I think hedge funds, as they became these larger, much more powerful influences in the market, they kind of taught everyone else on Wall Street about the value and the incredible money that could be made through this sort of short-term speculation that a lot of them were involved in. And during the period I kind of chart in the book through Steve Cohen's career, I mean, he went from being this little day trader. Eventually, he was trading so much that, Goldman Sachs, all the big banks were desperately competing for his business and doing anything they could to please him. And I think this kind of mindset spread to all of those big banks. And now you really cannot blame hedge funds for the mortgage crisis. However, they were major clients of these banks that were creating securities based on mortgage products. Without the hedge fund demand for those investments, it's hard to believe that the crisis would have been quite on the scale that it was. And very famously, John Paulson, who's a very prominent hedge fund manager, he was investing in against mortgages. So he was having a bank like Goldman pick subprime mortgages that he had researched and thought would go down, and then he was betting against them, and then the bank wasn't necessarily telling the other people on the other side of those bets how that whole thing had been constructed. So they were in there, they played a role, but they certainly aren't responsible for that. But what I thought was sort of interesting through sort of the period that I cover in the book was that while that whole mortgage fraud bubble really blew up, the government was also investigating insider trading, which had spread among many hedge funds, and they were getting company information and sort of buying it and sharing it amongst themselves and making a lot of money. All of this coincided with a very kind of heavy deregulation period in Washington, and I just think it's not a coincidence that all of this happened while Washington was focused on deregulating Wall Street And the SEC was specifically sort of told not to be aggressive about pursuing financial crime.
And just the ethos, I guess, and the modus operandi is what sort of contaminated the broader Wall Street.
Well, very short-term thinking. And, I mean, there are thousands of hedge funds, and they all have their own strategies, but there's a pretty big group, subset of them, which are, and Steve Cohen was one of these, they're sort of short-term event-driven hedge funds. So what they're trying to do is make bets on earnings announcements or drug trial results or mergers, things that they kind of know or expect are going to happen, and they want to research, they want to learn and kind of predict the outcome of this event, and then make a bet on it and make money off of it. So they're all just focused on the next few hours, days, weeks. They are not long-term investors like Warren Buffett, where you're taking a stake in the company and you're kind of aligned with the interests of the company. You want it to grow over time. They really don't care, right? They just want to make a trade. And that was so successful for some of them that I think everyone just started to try and do the same thing.
And we should say, so that there are no hard feelings, hashtag not all hedge funders, if that makes people feel more comfortable. But when you talk about that short-term interest, that misaligned interest between the hedge funders making money and the best interests of the company that they're involved with, that's what, when you talk about Whole Foods and you talk about hedge funders coming in and looking for a quarter by quarter increase in profits, which will drive the value of the stock up, even if it means like we're going to cut employees and you won't notice the drop in service or the drop in quality of our product for a couple of years, but by the time you do, we'll have made all our money and we'll be on to the next thing. I mean, that's basically, that hedge funding strategy is basically a larger problem within our economy, across the board.
Yes. I mean, something I say frequently to people is that this idea that companies are only beholden to their shareholders and that a company has to do whatever it has to do to please its shareholders and move its stock price up every quarter is a new idea, and it wasn't always so. And there are other stakeholders who have an interest in a company's health and performance over time, such as the employees, such as the customers, the communities. All of these people have some interest in how that company does and the decisions it makes. But over time, over a period that's coincided with this rise of sort of really aggressive, powerful short-term investing, you have companies focus more and more on placating their shareholders. And when you have these individuals, very smart, aggressive, kind of empowered hedge fund moguls with billions of dollars at their disposal, they're all very competitive with one another. They can take a huge stake in a company, and that really gives them this very powerful voice. And in some cases, they end up really driving the company through various measures to take steps that are maybe, generating profit for the shareholders in the short term. But of course, over time, we see it, blowing up, or exactly what you said. I mean, by the time you notice that they've swapped out the products to these much cheaper formulations made in China, the hedge fund investors made his or her money and they're gone.
And we should say, too, when we talk about shareholders, usually some of the biggest shareholders, aside from these hedge fund raiders, are the CEO and the board of directors, who also, and maybe, a couple other people in the C-suite who have their own sort of cottage industry that they're running, that whose incentive structure is slightly misaligned from the long-term health of the company. And so, but let's turn to your story, which is, where, I think arguably Stephen A. Cohen is, I don't want to say patient zero, but I mean, similar, right? Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, I was really interested in him because he was one of the most successful kind of pioneers of the hedge fund industry. And he was a very middle-class guy, very smart, scrappy, grew up in Long Island, went to Wharton, and he knew from early on that he wanted to be rich. He wanted to have more money than his parents, who were a little stretched financially. So Wall Street embraced him, and he started his hedge fund, SAC Capital, in 1992. And his timing was fortuitous, and it happened to be the exact moment that our society aligned itself, for whatever reason, to reward this kind of speculative trader job more richly than almost any other job you could find. So very quickly, he became a billionaire just through this sort of short-term momentum trading, what we would call day trading. And over time, all the Wall Street banks started to kind of cater to him. They would give him their best information. They would do anything they could to get his business. He was enormously powerful. And then in the mid-2000s, the FBI embarked on this big crackdown on illegal trading in the hedge fund industry. And very quickly, their investigation, they were flipping people and wiretapping hedge fund traders. Very quickly, this whole thing coalesced around SAC, Mr. Cohen's fund. And
well, tell people,
they ended up,
Well, give us a sense of the timing specifically. And it was a function of, this guy was getting regularly 30% annual returns, and that set off some alarm bells.
Right. Well, for years, everyone on Wall Street would point to SAC Capital as this incredible success story. They had never had, this is by 2013, they had never had a down year. I should correct that. They had only had one down year, 2008, which was the heat of the financial crisis, and everyone had a down year. But aside from that, they were posting these phenomenal returns, 30, 40, 50% year after year. No one could really understand how they were doing it, even if Steve Cohen was the greatest trader of his generation, which he may well have been. That is still just an odds-defying performance record. So all of his competitors were suspicious. And around 2004, 5, 6, the FBI started to figure out that actually, they really had no idea what these hedge funds were up to. They had become very large, and the FBI securities unit had been focused on these sort of small Ponzi schemes and kind of Wolf of Wall Street little CD cases. And they realized, okay, well, there's this huge and unregulated industry managing trillions of dollars. We need to figure out what's going on. So they started to look into it, and they discovered that a lot of hedge fund traders and analysts were paying executives at public companies, especially tech companies, to get information about their earnings, for example, or their new products before the rest of the market. They were getting material non-public information. They were paying for it, and they were making millions of dollars trading it. And a lot of their evidence pointed them towards SAC. Every little guy they kind of busted or approached said, well, you think I'm bad. You should check out what SAC Capital is doing. So they ended up devoting a lot of resources to investigating that firm.
And tell us the story. So Stephen Cohen, they ultimately don't bring charges against him. They bring the charges against his company. But before we get there, tell us the story of, just to give people a sense of the lengths that they would go with to get information, and tell us the story of Matthew Martoma and Sid Gilman, and also how Martoma and others who got information, maybe through this way or other ways, would communicate this information to Cohen.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I thought was very interesting about this world and submerging myself into it was just that how many incredibly kind of accomplished Ivy League, best and brightest young men, they were mostly men, were working as analysts and portfolio managers of these hedge funds, a lot of them at SAC, and they honestly were spending their days trying to figure out what a company's earnings would be within a penny. That was what they were devoting their mental energy to, and they were getting paid very richly for figuring it out correctly. And I thought that was just a very weird misallocation of intellectual capital in our economy, because these are people who could have done really interesting things in other fields, but this is what they chose to do.
They could have been writing sitcoms if they came from
They could have been writing sitcoms. They could have been curing cancer. Who knows? But they could have been teachers. But they wanted to make a lot of money, and this was the fastest way they could do it. So there they are on the phone all day, running around, trying to figure out, okay, Dell is reporting earnings in 2 weeks. Is it going to be a penny above or a penny below what people expect? It's sort of an insane job.
And Sheelah, did they have Was there an algorithm that if it is, let's say, a penny below, we can anticipate the stock dropping X percent, and so we go in and we can short it in such a way or take a position that we can take advantage of that small, we can arbitrage that small difference? Is that basically what the theory was?
Basically. I mean, in addition to figuring out what was going to happen, they also had to figure out what the market was expecting, because the stock's response to a piece of news is always based on what the market had expected to happen. So if there's a surprise for the market, that is the most valuable thing to figure out. If it's going to beat its earnings estimate and everyone's expecting it to perform poorly, then that's really valuable. If you figure out something and everyone else kind of knows it as well, it's going to be hard to make a good bet. So yes, that's basically what they were doing. And
would they look for companies? Would they zero in on companies that there was a sort of a conventional wisdom about, and then try and find something that was different?
Well, it sort of depended. I mean, they certainly love to do this a lot with volatile stocks like tech stocks and biotech stocks, which could move wildly based on even small pieces of news. Largely because there were so many hedge funds trading the stocks. I mean, they would just swing up and down like crazy. But yeah, they would have to pick their targets very carefully, and this is why they had all these increasingly math majors are going into this field. Math and computer programming skills are very valuable. And, the hedge funds have so many resources, so much money to spend, that they would then go and do all sorts of things, creative things, to try and figure out what this news was going to be, to get this information. And yes, it was easy to cross the line. And Matthew Martoma, who was convicted ultimately, I mean, he went to work for Steve Cohen in 2006, and he was a biotech kind of industry expert, a graduate of Duke and Stanford Business School. And he, over time, ended up cultivating.
He lied that he was from Harvard too, though, didn't he?
Well, he did attend Harvard, but he ended up being expelled from Harvard Law School because he had falsified his transcripts. I mean, this all came out later, so he was a very complicated fellow with a troubled background. But he did still have this kind of Ivy League pedigree, and he was very determined, and he got to SAC. He was a portfolio manager, which meant he had a little pool of money he was responsible for managing. He had his analysts and traders working for him, and he was also responsible for giving good trading ideas to Steve Cohen, his boss, and that's how SAC was structured. There were these competing groups of portfolio managers who all were out there researching ideas every day, and part of their job was to feed their best ideas up the food chain to Cohen, who was also trading his own money. So there was a lot of pressure on these people, and a lot of money to be made if they came up with good ideas. And Martoma spent months cultivating a relationship with a doctor, Dr. Sid Gilman, who was involved in a very high-profile Alzheimer's drug trial. And there were two public pharmaceutical companies testing this new drug. There were high hopes for the drug. Alzheimer's has no cure. Obviously, it's a devastating disease. So anyone who figured out a cure for this disease was going to make a ton of money. So there were all these hedge funds in there trying to make money off of this drug trial and figure out what was going to happen and bet the right way. And these stocks of these companies were almost entirely driven by expectations about this drug. And over time, according to the government's allegations, Martoma ended up kind of corrupting this doctor into sharing the results with him before they were public. And this was a very big deal. And during Martoma's trial, the government presented this whole scenario where, and they had all sorts of flight records and documents that, showing that Martoma had flown to the University of Michigan, where the doctor was a research chair, and had viewed this drug trial presentation on his computer, then got back on a plane back to Connecticut, and then the following morning, which was a Sunday morning, he had a phone call with Steve Cohen, his boss, and then the next week, Monday, SAC Capital started liquidating its holdings in these two stocks, and they ended up selling almost $1 billion worth of shares of these two drug companies, and then shorting them. So that happened over the next week. And then a few days later, Dr. Gilman presented the trial results publicly, and the stocks plunged because the trial was a huge disappointment. The market was shocked, and SAC Capital was alleged to have made $275 million.
And now, how did there was also, and we should say, like, whenever there was these instances, I mean, this isn't an example of one, but throughout that Cohen would have this system of, like, what was it called? Conviction scale or
Rating.
something like that? Rating? Yeah, just explain that, because it's pretty amazing that this guy got away without any without any charges being brought against him, because somehow, by the magic of, I mean, the idea that Martoma could have convinced Stephen Cohen to make these decisions and didn't bring up the fact that, like, hey, I've been going and meeting with this guy for months and he's given me inside information. The idea that that didn't come up in the conversation seems really hard to swallow.
Most people who read the book and the story are really stunned by the outcome and the fact that Steve Cohen ultimately, I mean, he pays a big fine, but nothing really happens to him.
But it's not really that big of a fine, right? I mean,
well, relative, yeah.
It's 10% of his
most
value, 10% of everything he made in that business.
Yeah, in the end, his total fines were $1.8 billion. So yes, maybe 10%. I mean, it's fair to say that it did not dent his life at all. He just wrote a check for that money. I mean, that's how rich he is. And to some extent, I think the fact that it ended the way it did, and it is so sort of shocking to people's sense of right and wrong, is what makes it a story of our time, because we increasingly live in a time when those at the very top remain insulated from what's going on, even though they are reaping the profits. And this is an increasing issue in our society, obviously. But it came down to a variety of factors. But there was this very dramatic showdown in 2013 between the government and Steve Cohen's lawyers. And his lawyers, he of course spent unlimited millions of dollars on the best defense team you could possibly have. Many of them were former prosecutors and SEC regulators, and they all went down to the U.S. Attorney's office in Manhattan. Preet Bharara was still the Manhattan U.S. Attorney at this time, and they attended this. They did this 4-hour presentation for the government, and their goal was to convince them not to charge Cohen. And reading about it later, it's sort of almost comical, because a lot of their argument rests on, he didn't read emails, he didn't know, he doesn't recall what was said. They brought up this conviction rating idea because, of course, Cohen's analysts were taught to present ideas to him with a number attached from 1 to 10. And if it had a 10, it meant you had 100% conviction in the idea. And this ended up insulating him, in some cases, from whatever it was the person had done to become so certain. So even though it seems baffling that someone could say, I'm 100% sure that this X event is going to happen in the future, I mean, it sort of seems impossible. This did sort of protect him on some level from knowing the dirty details. And in the end, the government concluded that they did not have enough evidence to be confident that they would win if they took him to trial. And they were, possibly scared of losing, but also, I think, trying to be principled and not push forward on something that they felt was probably right if they didn't have the evidence. And the ending is very unsatisfying for a lot of people.
How much of, I mean, there was a lot of, like, these cases, obviously there was a lot of these cases around that era because that was the nature of the era. We've talked about Sam Israel on this program as well, which was a far more blatant fraud, and obviously Madoff and others. But how much of what Stephen Cohen's business model was how much of it crossed the line, do you think? I mean, if this guy's getting 30% returns and his one of his people, Mertoma, it's not like, hey, I went out last night and I happened to meet somebody at a bar and I pretended like I was friends with him for a couple hours. We got really drunk and he told me about this Alzheimer's thing. I mean, this is a completely premeditated, long-term, I mean, you're talking over the course of months, right? A long-term project. If you're working for Stephen Cohen and you're engaging in this type of work to get this type of information, to give him a number 9 or a number 10 on the conviction rating, which I think it's reasonable to assume that at one point, maybe in the commissary, Cohen just says, like, if you ever develop a personal relationship with someone and and specifically to get this information, it's insider information, that's a 9 or a 10. I mean, depending on if you've actually slept with them or whatever it is that was the measure, right? I mean, so how much of that business is that?
It's hard to say. I mean, my sense from having spent so many months just really deeply reporting on Steve Cohen's background, his career, I think he was a very, very talented trader. I wouldn't necessarily call him an investor, which implies some kind of longer term investing strategy. He was a trader. He was a guy who could recognize momentum in the market and, make trades. And he was very, he wasn't scared of losing money. A lot of people are crippled by fear who do that job. I mean, he was really one of a kind in some respects. I am sure that he would have been very, very successful without any of that stuff going on at his firm. And he was also, he was a very smart businessman in some respects, and he did kind of evolve his hedge fund in clever ways as the market changed, and he was very successful at all that. But it's hard to quantify.
Right.
Ultimately, more than 8 people were linked to insider trading in some way. Several pled guilty or were convicted. One person had his conviction reversed later.
And nobody flipped.
So it's hard to say. People who were lower down flipped, but the FBI tried very hard to get someone who was close to Cohen, who was senior in the company, to flip. They really spent a lot of energy on that, and they just hit a wall and could not go any further. And I think that is ultimately why the case resolved the way it did. They just reached a certain point, and then they got stuck. And Martomo was really the one they had expected to deliver a case to them. I mean, Martoma refused to flip, and he is now serving a 9-year prison sentence in Florida. He's appealing his case, although no one seems super optimistic about that from his perspective. But that's largely why the case ended as it did.
Right, and it's there are people who toil away for more than 10 years at horrible jobs and don't come out and expect to get millions of dollars of reward, which I imagine he suspects is waiting for him on the other end. But who knows? All right. Lastly, let me ask you this: how much of the FBI's pursuit? I mean, I understand the motivations of I think of federal prosecutors and FBI agents who are in this division. And who look for this type of stuff. Obviously, the Southern District of Manhattan. This is where this stuff happens. And I'm not doubting the intensity and the sort of the sincerity of pursuit of these guys. But how much at the next level up, at the in the DOJ, how much of going after guys like this for insider trading and for for the stuff that you can just sort of peg as like, that's the, the criminal, the fraudsters. How much of the pursuit of that was a function of this will be much showier and we don't have to go after the banks for all the stuff that went on in bringing about the financial crisis?
Well, a lot of people do rightfully point out that they did do all this insider trading, prosecution, and very little on the banks, and people are rightfully very frustrated about that. I do like to remind people that the insider trading stuff started actually before the financial crisis hit. I mean, those cases were all kind of in the pipeline before 2007. So I think they did do the right thing by seeing it through. However, it's true that at some point they were stretched for resources and they had to make decisions about who was going to work on what. Now, I strongly believe they could have pursued insider trading and big bank mortgage fraud at the same time. I'm sure that was possible. It didn't happen. I do get the sense that at some point, all of these victories and all of these sort of flattering articles in the newspaper about Preet Bharara's 80-0 perfect record on insider trading, I'm sure that felt pretty good. And if you're if you're the person benefiting from all that, I mean, do you really want to pull the plug on that and turn to an area that's much less certain in terms of outcome? I mean, insider trading cases, people sometimes say, oh, they're so easy. I would disagree. Having studied what went into these cases, they're very difficult, often lead to dead ends. But
they're a lot less
politically
complicated.
They are. They're more straightforward. They don't involve taking on huge institutions. Hedge funds are more independent, perhaps lower hanging fruit on some level. And those big bank cases were probably daunting, trying to figure out all that collateralized debt, obligation stuff, and there probably would have been a large number of investigations that did not yield cases. And that's always tough because who wants to spend months of their career? These are often young prosecutors, ambitious young people from Ivy League law schools, trying to make names for themselves, and one can sympathize with that, but someone should have made a decision to commit the resources, and it didn't happen, and I think we are still paying the price politically for that.
Did his initials, was his initials EH by any chance?
I think there are several people who share the blame, but he might be on the list, yes.
Sheelah Kolhatkar, the book is Black Edge, Inside Information, Dirty Money, and the Quest to Bring Down the Most Wanted Man on Wall Street. It's a great read. We'll put a link to it at majority.fm. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
It was great to be here.
All right, folks, we're going to head into the fun half of our program, wherein we have all sorts of fun.
Is that a 10? Yes, it's a 10. Okay. Let's invest then. 30% returns. Nothing strange about that.
Do we have a clip from Rachel Maddow last night interviewed?
I'm Rachel Maddow.
Hold on for 1 second.
All right.
You're upsetting some of our listeners.
Really? I haven't heard that.
No.
Sorry, Rachel.
No. I'm not talking about specifically Rachel. I'm talking about your voices.
Oh, yes. Are you going to read that?
I might read it.
That is one of the. That's one of the. I hope.
I just got annoyed.
I really hope he's listening, and I feel so badly for his students.
I'm not. No. Don't give away anything like that. Oh, okay. That's not appropriate. I'm just saying, look.
Sorry, Rich.
I don't mind getting criticism. In fact, probably more often than not, I enjoy it. But there's,
You didn't enjoy that criticism.
No, this one was just really annoying. The gist of it, I'm not going to read the email.
It was great.
But it was...
it's genius.
It was brilliant.
All right. Well, if everybody's going to talk so well about it.
I mean, you could definitely tell.
Just the first couple lines.
And you could tell that this guy's really healthy and of sound mind when you read it.
All right, look. Let's not editorialize. Let it speak for itself. The subject line is, your show has really gone downhill, and I'm about to stop listening.
So far, so good.
Now that gets my attention. I'm like, well, I should see what's going on. Dear Sam and company, you never respond to my emails, which is sad because I'm an informed listener and I have nearly the same credentials as many of the guests you have on your show. That's very possible.
It's totally possible.
Perhaps
maybe even more so.
He says, perhaps it's because I'm not a paying member or you don't have enough time to address every email. Now, the reality is I don't have enough time to address every email. We don't have a button that flags your email when you come in. And, I suppose you could say, I'm a paying member. I mean, I do remember my grandmother late in her life when she was like in her 80s. We would drive over to the bank, and she would pull into the the window, like the drive-through, and she would start by saying, "I'm a depositor," as if like, okay, great, lady. What do you think? Who else is here? But the fact is that I read a lot of the emails that we get in. Some fall through the cracks, but I don't respond to many. I responded to this one. I've been now here it is. But be that as it may, and I do appreciate that construct, I must be completely honest in telling you that, and here he's being completely honest because it's underlined and bolded.
Yes.
I am now getting very irritated by listening to your show.
I thought you underlined and bolded that for comedic effect.
I did that in my response, but this is,
no.
He
The
did
original,
this. In the original, he
the
did it.
original has a bolded underlined because that's what you do. When
So let's just be clear on what's going on. And then he says, "I've been a listener for the past 4 years or so." So let's just be clear on what information has already been imparted to me. His opinion is the show has gone downhill. He is threatening to stop listening. In fact, he's threatened to stop listening because the show has become so irritating to him. But he also wants me to know that he's been listening for 4 years and has never supported the show. No.
But he has credentials.
Well, maybe that's part of it. And gone are the days when you had probing, policy-oriented interviews with the likes of Bill Lazonick or Naomi Klein. I mean, we haven't had either one of those guests on for a while, but I mean, over those 4 years,
just to be
I've
fair,
done 1,000 interviews.
But to be fair, I mean, just in the nature of transparency with our audience, not interviewing Bill Lazonick as an example is part of our no longer have probing policy-oriented interviews initiative that we've launched about a year
Bill
ago.
Lazonick is one of my favorite guests. And I would say between me and this email writer are the only two people who know who Bill Lazonick is.
That is absolutely the case.
Bill Lazonick,
And he is actually a great guest.
Every year, I'm like, can we put him back in the best of?
Yes.
I don't know that I reference anybody more than Bill Lazonick.
You should really be doing your Jewy voice for that yourself.
Oh, hold on. Now let's get into the meat of this stuff. And here's where things get a little bit more legitimate. Now all I hear are these stupid ass accents and imitations of Michael, followed by
Of
Kelly's
Michael?
obnoxious of Michael.
But I don't understand. He wrote it as of Michael's impressions or impressions of
I'm
Michael.
reading it as it is.
Okay, so very bad writing there, sir.
Well, or maybe he feels like I'm doing an impression of you.
Which actually would be read much more legitimately.
I am really getting tired of it. I skip over all of Michael's Monday shows, not the least of which, because he's too focused on foreign policy, and yet doesn't critique Putin enough for stealing the election. He goes on to say Cenk Uyghur's recent commentary on the show was pretty good, and I like Ring of Fire parts when Sam interviews Digby. In any case, I have a whole host of other podcasts I listen to. None of them are perfect, but I listen to Democracy Now!, The Young Turks, Vox.com, The Weeds, Living on Earth, Amicus, etc. He also says he enjoys Cliff Schecter's rants.
Wait, Living on Earth is still on? Oh, that's a pretty good NPR show.
And they resemble Driftgrass rants on the Professional Left podcast. But please, in caps. And he does say please. Underline, give it a rest with the accents and imitations, Michael. You're grating on my ears like fingernails on the chalkboard.
Please, may I?
Hold on for 1 second. And you're overdoing it and trying too hard. Find other accents to do and stop interrupting Sam. I listen to the show for Sam, not the accents. I'm going to withhold name.
May I read the previous email? One of the emails that we have ignored.
Of his?
Yes.
No. You should know, folks, that he is a doctor. Like Seb Gorka. He's not a medical doctor.
One of my ways of breaking the ice at parties is to go up to people and say, I have many of the same credentials as you people. Can I join this little circle?
You sound a little Carsonish there. I have many of the same credentials. I like the list as my favorite part.
But I guess the point is, look, folks, I'm introducing a new membership level based upon this constructive criticism. It will have no Michael's irritating accents and imitations. We will have no laughing from Kelly. It will also cost you nothing, and it's entitled an I'm Not a Listener membership. And all you need to do is not listen, and you will find that if you're irritated by the content, as we're presenting now, by not listening, what will happen is you will have less irritation. Now, we're talking about swag for this membership level, maybe a T-shirt that says, Majority Report, I'm not listening. And then on the back, maybe like, however, I do listen to
Living on Earth,
and then
Vox,
a list of all the other
Now.
podcasts you listen to. That will cost you, however, because I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to make these T-shirts to give to celebrate the I'm Not a Listener membership level at a cost. It costs some money. It's
Right.
much. So
That's where you need to invest.
right. We
We
need to work out the revenue structure for that one.
But
For
the
not
not
listening.
listening is
Right.
completely free.
Yeah.
It's totally open.
Yes, that's always an option, folks. It is always an option. But, however, if you are one of those very few dwindling people who are not irritated by the show anymore, and you would like me to read your emails when you email them in, become a member.
Ding.
Not only will you support this free show, which is really, really going downhill fast, but you will also, as a way of saying thank you, we give you even worse content afterwards in the fun half. Stuff that the most irritating content. So if you're one of those people out there going like, I wish there was more aggravating me today, become a member. Go to jointhemajorityreport.com. We will aggravate you to no end. If you're one of those people out there who don't have the financial means to pay for people to irritate you, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Tell us how crappy the show is.
Get the full irritating experience.
That you want to be completely chafed by this program, and we will work out a deal with you. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. You will hate the way it tastes, and it will make you feel very jumpy. But you'll get 10% off with the coupon code MAJORITY, so by all means. And if you buy your crap from Amazon or jet.com, do so through our link at majorityreportkickback.com. You will find the experience very, very difficult to take. So please do it. And quick break, 646-257-3920 is the number, and we'll take your IMs. We'll be right back after this. We're going to talk more about this horrible healthcare bill. They have yet to vote on it, but apparently the Republicans are confident that they have the votes. We shall see. We'll be right back.
He is like the dog. He says no, 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 no. And though he'd like to fall, he says no, 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 no. He says you're just a
We are back. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. What the heck was that? Oh, is that? Are we on? It's got to. What is that? I got to be connected, maybe to.
Has to be you.
Oh, I know what it is. I am in the chat room. I'm hearing the. It's got to do with the phone system.
I really hope that guy was listening.
We are back. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report.
There we go. All right, let's take a quick phone call. The number is 646-257-3920, 646-257-3920. You're calling from a 732 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how you guys doing? This is Bilal from Jersey City.
What's your name?
Bilal.
Bilal?
What's up, Jalal?
Yes. Good. So I've been wanting to call you guys about this for a very, very long time since the election. And I didn't do it because everybody was really raw about the election, and there were just other things to concentrate on.
Right.
But this past Thursday. Oh, by the way, your show the last week and a half has been fantastic. I don't know what this guy's talking about. Maybe he didn't listen to last week.
Well, maybe you're a little irritated.
But, yeah. Anyway. So. Last Thursday, I think it was last Thursday, the Guardian had an article about Mélenchon as opposed to Macron. Mélenchon, the far-left candidate, he has not supported Macron outright. He has just said that he's not going to support Le Pen, right?
Right.
Or Le Pen. So so they did a survey of his supporters, and they found only like 20 to 30% are actually going to end up voting for Macron.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about our election and all the crap people got for Bernie or Bust or Jill Stein voters. And this kind of shows to me that this is kind of a behavior that's akin to democracy, or the way I think of it, this is kind of like political efficacy, but the other side of low political efficacy. Low political efficacy is when people, they don't think that the system's going to work for them, so they don't go out and vote. And you find that usually amongst poor and disenfranchised people within a community or within a country. And I just feel like those people, the Bernie or Bust or the Jill Stein voters, or even Gary Johnson or Donald Trump voters for that matter, were those people, but they actually went out and voted, or, no matter how crazy that was, their vote was. And you guys went on, and this is where my critique comes in. Although I love you guys, okay? Unlike that guy, but you guys, had this whole narrative of the dumb left, and you don't understand it or whatever it is. But I think this is just, you can't expect everybody to vote the way, they vote. And it's just, how do you deal with political efficacy? If you can answer that question, then
political
you can have a real
efficacy?
conversation.
What do you mean by political efficacy?
So it's the idea that people who have a belief, or people who feel that they are that the system works for them, they will go out and vote. Okay.
Right.
And those people will be middle class, upper middle class, whomever. Okay. But the people who most need the system to work for them, they will not engage the system.
Well,
and not just
I would
voting,
say,
but they just will not engage into the system.
Listen, but hold on for 1 second. When you vote for Bernie Sanders, or even if you vote for Jill Stein, it's not an indictment of the system. You're just saying, I want someone different in there. I mean, I can understand that there are people who say, like, I don't even deal with politics.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Wait. Let me finish.
Yeah.
because there are institutional constraints on a president. There are systemic constraints on a president. And I understand the concept that there are people who don't vote because they don't see any difference in their lives, regardless of who's in office. Regardless of who's in office. Not Jill Stein, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody. I have no doubt, and I have said so for over a year and a half, that he would have won 2 years. But it's not the idea of there's not a systemic problem. I mean, if you think a systemic problem is going to be healed by one person, you're wrong. That's just a fact. No one person's going to come into office and change the system.
I think you voting for that one person, whoever it is, okay? You're just trying to, whether you're right or wrong in terms of how you're strategically doing it, you're trying to affect a certain change that will make you closer to the goal, okay? Regardless of whether that person is perfect or not.
Actually, listen, you and I, hold on for one second. I agree, but there are a lot of people who said, I'm not voting based upon trying to achieve a goal. I'm voting because it's my conscience. Right?
It's the same thing, though.
No, that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing.
It is.
Well, no. Well, if your goal is to appease your own conscience when you vote, that's very different than my goal is to achieve certain political objectives.
That's the core difference right there.
I mean, is that not true?
That's kind of the big difference. What's going on?
No, just
okay. Well, I just think it's people who went out to vote and they voted for these, candidates that never had a chance. And what people are going to do in France, the Mélenchon voters, these people are people who don't really believe in the system, okay? So they can either just sit at home and say, I'm not going to vote at all, or they can engage the system in a way that they feel is going to bring about eventually. And I think a lot of these people are like,
all right, eventually. Okay. So eventually, do you think that Donald Trump is going to eventually, what damage do you think we're going to go through? And then what, okay, so even if I am to agree with you, which I don't, people have said, I'm voting my conscience. Which is, I'm sorry, it's different than I'm trying to achieve a political goal. Now, there were some people who also said, well, by not voting for Hillary Clinton or voting for Donald Trump at that point, because I don't get the point of it, frankly. Other people said, my goal is to send a message to the Democrats. Now, that, of course, we all know is ludicrous, right? We had Hillary Clinton lost. Everybody who said that they were going to vote for Jill Stein to send the Democrats a message, they all deny that they were responsible for Hillary Clinton's loss anyways, so they can't possibly be sending a message. So that's off the table. That whole notion, that won't be resurrected for another 4 years. But those people who said, well, if we get Trump, we're going to bring about the revolution sooner. Well, nobody takes that seriously now either, right? The revolution is going to be maybe Democrats get Congress in 2018, which is sort of a bank shot way of getting there, right? I'm not going to vote for them in 2016, so they get there in 2018. But be that as it may,
yeah, but
we could
the arguments that you were making before, during the election, and I understand it, but this is the standard argument that no matter what election we're in, people make is that if you don't vote for the centrist Democrat, then this Republican's going to get into office, and nothing really changes. And that's how we.
We can test that premise, right? Because let's say in 2012 when I said that, or in 2008 when I said that about Barack Obama, as bad as the Affordable Care Act, you and I may have issues with it. Are you going to prefer to live in a world where you can be denied health insurance because of pre-existing conditions, where even if you have employer coverage, that you can have a yearly or an annual or a lifetime maximum, where you do not get the essential benefits. You're going to prefer that.
But what about the Tea Party?
Well, then, wait a second.
Happened,
Forget
right?
about the Tea Party for a second. Let's just test the premise that you just offered, which is that nothing changes when you vote for a centrist Democrat versus a Republican. No, you're wrong. And we're just about to see. I mean, this entire question of health insurance now is a function of people voting for Barack Obama instead of John McCain.
Okay, but this is okay. The Republicans, okay, the plan for a lot of environmental regulation, a lot of health care, for example, a lot of these plans that are Democrat plans right now are actually Republican plans from way back. Okay.
Well, also, yeah, I understand. I understand.
Right?
Wait. Hold on for 1 second.
They're winning the ideological battle here.
They're winning the ideological battle.
In the long run.
Well, that's true. But there's no evidence that losing elections helps you win the ideological battleground in the long run. There's no evidence of that.
Absolutely, and that's the point that you need to make to such voters. But there's also a point to be made that we can't keep supporting. We can't keep. For example, if you watch any MSNBC, you watch CNN, whatever, they're talking about Trump. They're not talking about these Democrats
I know.
and
dude, you don't hear me critiquing that? You don't hear me critique. You don't hear me saying over and over. And I said it during the campaign when Hillary was in the primary. I said it in the general. There's a real problem if she's not running on a policy agenda. I mean, you could throw a stick at any of those shows that we did during that time. And I was saying as early as March, before, she had won the primary, I said, if she goes to the general election and she runs only on her resume, there's going to be a problem. Because when you pull it onto that playing field with Donald Trump, if Donald Trump is the nominee and around by March, we started to realize he was going to be, you're going to run into a problem. You need to run on policy proposals. So, I mean, I don't, but I got to jump. But I've spent too much time on this. You call back.
Can I just say one thing and then I'm done?
Can
I just say one thing? One quick
thing.
thing. Okay, the point that I was trying to make is that these people who are
people should vote for Le
who
Pen.
go out and vote crazy, these people, I think if you change your conversation in a way that you understand where they're coming from, maybe we can reach out to them and change their minds. That's all.
I think honestly, I also want to thanks for seeing us at the Bell House. I remember you. Thanks for coming out. And number two, I think that the people that were persuadable, we did persuade. And I think that the people that were completely emotionally wedded to an irrational argument are emotionally wedded to an irrational argument.
I would say not with 100%, but I would say broadly speaking, yes, I think that's true. We got calls from people who said like, I'm not.
I got it. I mean, I was never in a swing state, but I was open to voting.
Here's the dirty little
secret.
That's
the other really easy thing. This only applies to a handful of states.
The people who are listening to this show, I think that politics matter. I mean, I think broadly speaking, they think that they matter.
Yeah.
You calling from a 970 area code. Who's this? Hello? Hello? 970. I know you're listening to the show. Hello?
I think, broadly speaking, they think that they matter. Yeah. You come from a 970 area code.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Hold on.
I don't know. Hello? Hello?
Am I hearing myself right now?
No. You're hearing me.
Sam Seder. Oh, my gosh. Well, this is Patrice from Denver.
Denver?
And I listened to the show, the podcast yesterday where you talked briefly about modern monetary theory.
Right.
and Stephanie Kelton, and I didn't really take any notes because I was driving, but I feel like there's a few misconceptions you have about MMT. I mean, it's not really. It is an economic viewpoint, but it really is the operational reality of how our economy works, because we we're not pegged to a gold standard, or we're not like the European Monetary Union where they have to finance every single euro that is spent,
right?
And that's why they're always kind of messed up. But yeah, definitely get on Stephanie Kelton and or Warren Mosler.
That's
Randy Ray. They're all really brilliant people, and I think
repeated what
Stephanie
I
Kelton.
said.
She was on
Yes, no, we've had Stephanie Kelton on the
Who
show.
did what?
We've had Stephanie Kelton on the show a couple of times, and I'm pretty sure I said, I mean, I may have said it's a view as opposed to the absolute reality, but
I guess in the interview you were talking to I forget his name, your guest yesterday, about like a plan to like how do we pay for things like healthcare,
I mean,
and
look,
we don't have to pay for it.
Okay, here's the thing. I've had this conversation with people in the past. I happen to think that the modern monetary theorists make sense. The reality of our political situation is that if you go out there and you talk about a policy without even acknowledging that it will cost money, even though I don't think that we need to tax for the sake of that. I think our taxing is more to do with distribution of wealth. Then it's dead on arrival for the vast majority of people who are going to hear it. There are two separate projects that need to happen. And in the context of talking about one, when we're talking about specific policies, to ignore the political reality, I think, for someone in my position, I'm not saying I have a lofty position, I'm just saying I'm a talk show host, would be pretty silly.
Right.
So I have caveats that I throw in, and people who are aware of modern monetary theory pick up on those caveats when I talk about, paying for things. People who are conscious of it, they hear me say that, and they send in an email, and it's usually like, you can go further, and I go, maybe I can, and that's basically it. I mean, so we need to get further there. Look, Stephanie Kelton was a primary advisor to Bernie Sanders, and she had access to him in a way that a lot of us don't. And I'm not hearing Bernie Sanders going out there and saying that stuff. Now, it may have softened his deficit hawkery, and I have never been a deficit hawk. And so, you
definitely go after Pete Peterson.
Yes, and so, look, I mean, I understand that dilemma, and we'll have Stephanie Kelton on again soon. We've had her on a couple of times, but I mean, that's that. But I appreciate the call, and I'm happy you did not take notes.
Thank you. I
while
love
you were
the show
driving.
and all of your. It's good, and thank you for you and your team. It's a really good show. I am a member, and thank you for taking my call.
Oh,
that's why we took your call.
I mean, come on. We have the special,
I like that.
special. Is this a member? Phone guy calling. This is something that happened when we were on the air yesterday. James Comey testifying to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Patrick Leahy, you'll recall that Rudy Giuliani seemed to be almost like borderline clairvoyant.
Pretty sure something's going to happen.
Yeah, with what was going on with the FBI, particularly the New York FBI office. I mean, it was like a clairvoyance that he had. Although the only thing that made me suspicious of the clairvoyance was that he claimed he had sources there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken. Well, here Patrick Leahy asks James Comey, hey, you going to look into this at all? Because that doesn't seem appropriate, right? I mean, aside from your whole policy where you don't reveal investigations with that asterisk that you tend to put on it sometimes in certain situations, certainly that asterisk doesn't cover somebody telling Rudy Giuliani what's going on.
During your investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, a number of surrogates like Rudy Giuliani claimed to have a pipeline to the FBI. He boasted that, and I quote, numerous agents talked to him all the time, close quote, regarding the investigation. He even said that he had insinuated he had advance warning about the emails described in your October letter. Former FBI agent Jim Kallstrom made similar claims. Now, either they're lying or there's a serious problem within the Bureau. Did anybody in the FBI during this 2016 campaign have contact with Rudy Giuliani about the Clinton investigation?
I don't know yet, but if I find out that we're leaking information about our investigations, whether to reporters or to private parties, there'll be severe consequences.
Did you know of anything from Jim Kallstrom?
Same answer. I don't know yet.
You know anything about from other former agents?
I don't know yet, but it's a matter that I'm very, very interested in.
But you are.
We are now, what, 5 or 6 months out from those statements? I don't know yet.
I hope. I've just always wanted.
But I'm
now.
interested in. Sometimes, sometimes these things fall in your lap. But sometimes, if you are the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as opposed to the Federal Bureau of hopefully things will fall in my lap, you might want to get out there and investigate it.
Well, as you say lap, I think you're missing an important thing that we always need to assess with James Comey now, which is how does his stomach feel about it?
I get the feeling he's mildly nauseous about it. Not
even.
More queasy.
Yeah, a little queasy.
I am almost somewhat agitated about it. I guess he did say, I'm very interested.
Yeah, Senator,
I'm almost like at a hankering. I got like not quite a full hunger and not a nausea, but like a hankering.
I like how busy Giuliani was. It was like the potential illegal coordination with the FBI office in New York was like in between the how do we have a ban without calling it a ban meeting.
Right.
Well, it's the one place the FBI was watching too. He's saying that on Fox and Friends.
Right. That must have made Kellyanne's babysitting job a lot easier that day when that first broke.
Meanwhile, the White House today signed an executive order. It's not clear to me what that executive order is going to do. I know what Donald Trump is claiming it's going to do. But it appears they're arguing that it will basically allow for campaigning in churches. I don't know if an executive order can do that.
I look forward to running and campaigning with Jeremiah Wright.
Yeah,
I will see you soon. That's where I'm planning on my church outreach.
But today, I think this was the Judicial Committee, where Justice Department officials are confirmed. Al Franken was at a hearing where he was asking the Special Counsel for Religious Discrimination, Eric Teen, if his job will somewhat be more difficult since Donald Trump has basically someone listed as a perpetrator of hate and a promoter of hate crimes, a Muslim bigot in the White House as a chief advisor, and Al Franken is questioning this guy to see if it's going to be difficult for him. Now, you can understand, he doesn't want to answer this question.
Mr. Treen, as we attempt to understand the factors contributing to the rise in hate, violence, and rhetoric, I'm curious what message you think it sends to individuals who may engage in that kind of reprehensible behavior when the president selects Steve Bannon as his chief strategist?
The message that I feel strongest as a prosecutor and an attorney for the Department of Justice is the consistent message that I've gotten from the Attorney General to pursue hate crimes, to continue doing the work we've been doing.
I'm not saying the message that you got. I'm saying because you're not committing any of the religious hate crimes. I'm talking about the people who do. What message does it send to them, not you, that Mr. Bannon is a chief strategist?
Right. No, I would say I was encouraged as you were by the president's remarks before Congress.
That's not answering my question.
Yeah, I can only really speak for myself, and I have consistently been given the message to continue to pursue cases on behalf of Muslims.
You are the special counsel for religious discrimination. Certainly you must have some perspective on this that you can share with us on what it means when the president selects as a special counsel someone who's trafficked in anti-Muslim propaganda.
Senator, with all due respect, I am here talking about hate crimes and can only stress that I've had a consistent message that we should continue to pursue these mosque cases involving under RLUIPA and these hate crime cases regardless of the religion of the victim.
Yeah. So in other words, I don't feel comfortable talking about the message, having someone who has promoted such hate crimes be in the White House, what that message sends. That's basically what that comes down to. Tough position for that guy to be in, but good for Al Franken for making him feel a little queasy about accepting a job with these type of people. Meanwhile,
certainly queasy.
While in one division of the Justice Department, they are supposedly pursuing hate crimes against Muslims. In another part of the Justice Department, they were working on convicting a woman named Desiree Ferouz, who is a 61-year-old woman. She is a member of Code Pink. She was in the Jeff Sessions confirmation hearing. She laughed, I think, at one point when someone said that Jeff Sessions had a distinguished record. She laughed. Subsequent to the laugh, and we know this from a tweet, I think that it was a Huffington Post reporter, had witnessed the whole thing, tweeted when she was getting pulled out, as we're going to see the video of her getting pulled out, saying, as far as I can tell, she is being arrested for laughing, right? She laughed. She was doing nothing else. Then the cops came over, and this happened.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Feinstein, members of this distinguished committee, I am pleased to join Senator Shelby in presenting my friend and colleague, Senator Jeff Sessions, and to offer my support.
Why am I being taken out of here? This man is evil. You're evil. Do not vote for Jeff Sessions. I was going to be quiet. Now you're going to have me arrested? For what? For what? You said something ridiculous. His voting record is evil. Why am I being arrested?
Federal prosecutors said Ferouz's laughing caused enough of a disruption to turn heads and divert attention from the hearing. They also accused her of provoking further disturbance when she protested her eventual ejection from the hearing. She was convicted yesterday. There were two other women convicted on Wednesday who were found guilty of parading or demonstrating after dressing in KKK robes for the hearing. They were not convicted of the same disorderly conduct charge as Ferouz because they stood up in costume before the hearing officially began. She faces up to 12 months in prison and a $2,000 fine for that laugh. Justice Department. Anybody see the irony here? Confirmation for the head of the Justice Department?
Also, I mean, isn't this the party that's really deeply concerned about snowflakes and freedom of speech and college campuses won't invite
There's a
racists?
time and place for
Right.
all of it.
Yeah, exactly. I look forward to
In
Dave
her-
Rubin's not
in
conversation
her
about
favor,
this.
She is white. But then the other stuff.
Oh, well, if she wasn't white, we would add a making terroristic threats charge to that as well. There's such a thing as a Arab laugh. Learned all
I think we
about
call
that
that
from David
a
Horowitz.
hate crime. All right, let's do this one. Where does Kevin Swanson? Where can you hear generations?
I tried to look that up for about 5 minutes, and I think it might just be an online thing now.
Ugh, online shows. Give me a break. Meanwhile, the pastor, Kevin Swanson, declared on his Generations radio program yesterday that parents have an obligation to take care of their children better than they are, to shield them from the nefarious forces that are operating in public schools. Let's listen to this.
Agenda with your children. And friends, I realize that this may sound a little bit hyperbolic. It may sound a little bit of an exaggeration. I don't think it is, because I think if you begin to see the trajectory of where things have gone and you just draw it out for the next 5, 6, 8 years, you're going to find this is the agenda. The goals of the educational program for your kids in the public schools, the goals of the world for your children is that your kids be transgendered and communist by 20 years of age. You think I'm overstating the case, Steve?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, if you take out the line from where they start, several years ago, and you continue on to its logical end.
Draw that line out for the next 5, 8 years, friends. Of course, this is the agenda. Parents, just get serious about it. Do you want your kids transgendered and communist at 18 years of age? Is that your goal? If it isn't, then maybe you ought to bring a different vision into the education of your children.
How's yours going, Sam? Matt and I don't have kids yet, so we, are just wondering how's it coming in terms of, are you going to hit the goal, the age goal?
As a parent, you're constantly wondering if you're doing enough.
Right.
And then you're always like, at what age do I really start to lean into this, right?
Because there's going to have to be a point where you're literally like, here are the hormones. Like, we're doing this.
Yes, and here's the thing. I feel like Saul is a lot more, I can manipulate him more than I can Milo.
Right. He's taken to the Barbies very quickly.
He's taken, the transgender thing I feel like will take care of itself. It's the communism.
Yeah.
And I realize, after when you're on your second child, you realize you got to start earlier.
You do, and I think I would recommend. What about little
Saul,
Mao pictures? He
Saul
looks like
goes
kind of
to
like a
school
friendly uncle.
wearing
He's got a
Chinese,
little,
like one of those classic Chinese communist outfits.
Right.
Now,
do you call him Uncle Mao?
Uncle Mao got pictures in his, and
I've actually heard that some kids really like Ho Chi Minh because of the goatee.
Mila is she loves to look at pictures from the killing fields.
Right. Well, that's a good sign.
She can't get enough.
That's a good sign.
And really,
does she have good glasses material about you and how Daddy would get wiped out?
That's right.
Yeah, that's
it's
great.
very funny. And it's cute now, but the thing is, by the time when she's 15, she's only 11 now. By the time she's 15, I want her to mean it.
Yeah.
So I've got to get contact lenses.
Yeah. It can't be a joke anymore.
No. There is a really good middle school, or one that I really appreciate, with a great principal. I'm not kidding. Who apparently the DOE is claiming that she is engaging in communist activities at the school. I'm not kidding. I'm reading in the Post.
Wow.
The DOE initially refused to tell Bloomberg what she might have done wrong. She's filing lawsuit against the DOE. It's basically because she wants to maintain a high percentage of kids in her school, students, from a diverse background, racially and socioeconomically.
Huh.
So there's like
It's very
65% free lunch kids in that school, and she wants to keep it around that level so that there's actually like a diverse mix and it's an integrated school. And the DOE, I think, wants it to become more of like a whiter school, I think, because they need students from that District 15 and who live closer to the school. And so initially they refused to tell her what she might have done wrong. This is a claim in her federal lawsuit. But she told the assistant principal, but one of the investigators told the assistant principal they were looking into communist activities taking place at the school. It was the school I wanted Milo to go to.
I would imagine.
I did not win that battle.
And did the wealthier kids have to directly give the poorer kids money to pay for their hormone treatments?
I mean, I imagine
I would hope
it
so.
is.
And then there's struggle sessions.
I think
The families that have 2 cars, the kids get berated. I like that.
Oh yeah, no, but I also think that there's probably not a lot of 2-car families in Brooklyn. I would imagine.
I would hope not.
It gets very complicated.
The
though.
bigger the brownstone,
And,
the longer the
I
re-education.
would like to sit
That's
down
what
with
we
that
say.
pastor for a while and just ask him, what about transgenderism or communism just distinct from each other? Is it the combination? Is it the combination that's the problem?
That'd be great if he's like, oh, I can meet you halfway on that.
Well, I can meet you, yeah.
I'll tell you what, if you support free markets and no labor laws protecting children from getting, asbestos in their lungs, I could see people being transgender. And you know what, conversely, if you want a little bit of a worker cooperative here and there, but you don't have any friggin' transgenders running around, maybe I could negotiate. But when you combine them.
Well, no, but really the really difficult thing about this is that it just puts so much pressure on parents. Because if you have a transgendered kid who's transgendered but still buys into the capitalist system, you feel like I haven't done my job.
Imagine if you're
Well,
12.
Or if you just have a kid who's communist and they're not transgender, you're just like, I feel like I failed my child.
What if your 12-year-old's a neoliberal?
Well, you're obviously unfit to parent, but I just want to say, Sam, it's presumptuous of me as not a parent, but frankly, not to add pressure, but you have failed.
I mean,
if
I don't know.
you can't do the complete training, then what's the point?
I'm not, if you're not committed to giving your children, forcing your children on a hormone regimen,
If they aren't-
or taking them to the local communist Sunday breakfast, Sunday brunch, I don't know.
Look, if they're not taking the hormones and cheering the Khmer Rouge while they watch the killing fields, you're not a good parent. You failed.
I failed. Let's go to the phones. You're calling from a 718 area code. Who's calling? Where are you calling from?
You are being graced by the presence of Libertarian Mandela.
Oh,
I'm going to be a libertarian here and say, how dare you touch my intellectual property? I'm going to sue you.
Hey, Michael, I have the same credentials as pretty much you or any right-wing nut that Sam has on his show.
It's a good
Not that you are
callback to the
same.
email. I like that.
That's good. Greg.
No, this is Greg, actually.
Yes, no. I think
Oh, really?
How'd you know? How'd you know that?
What's
Yeah.
happening, Greg?
I liked your 2 callers today. I kind of wanted to mention, though, about the MMT. The thing is, our GDP is, at this point, our national debt is over 100% GDP. And with Puerto Rico's, what is it? Debt was 68, and now they're basically declaring bankruptcy. Did you hear about this? It's bigger than Detroit. This is the biggest bankruptcy.
Yes, I understand.
That there is.
I understand. They're not allowed to declare bankruptcy. Yes, except for Puerto Rico doesn't have the ability to print their own money. You know that, right?
Exactly. I know. That's the problem.
That's why states
They can't
have
print their own
constitution.
money.
Right. But America can. The country can. You know that, right?
Right. So we can take on higher levels of debt. What I'm always saying is, and I know that sounds very libertarian, but I want to decentralize things. I would have liked for Detroit to have its own monetary policy and print its own local currency.
Wow.
I think it's more resilient when local communities have, the ability to survive after Hurricane Sandy without waiting for FEMA, print their own currency to, do stuff without waiting for this. Like, look in Europe when you had the pigs countries, right? Portugal, Greece, Spain, Ireland. They all had trouble exactly because they went on the euro and they didn't.
Yes,
they weren't able to have their own fiscal policy.
Yes, but you understand, right, that that these are states and not different countries.
These are states. What do you mean? Which one?
Well,
is a state?
like Louisiana is a state, and it's not a separate country from America.
Oh, yeah.
In
So
other words,
capitalism,
our
there's gonna be
federal
pockets
government, and these are all citizens of the federal government. So our federal government, if they wanted to, could pay for all those things. But why don't I wait for
the point is
Stephanie
these little pockets, right?
Yeah, but
I
they
guess
don't
what I'm
have,
saying
they're
is
not
these pockets
little
like
pockets.
Detroit-
They're parts of the country. We could do it.
Oh,
No, I
it's
agree.
a pocket.
We could do it. No, we could do it. I'm saying the same as you. I'm agreeing with you. I'm
Okay.
saying that the little pockets that are experiencing financial hardships. There's many towns, people are leaving. If they were able to print their own currency, also, then they could run their own. They could, issue their own cryptocurrencies, for example, invest in shares in this town, whatever it is.
Okay.
They could actually attract people to that town.
Yes.
I'm
well,
saying
I mean, in the
decentralize all
Berkshires,
things.
they have they do have like Berkshire bucks or something, and that's fine for small scale,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if you have all those
So I
things
guess-
you need within that, and it's worth it for everybody to accept that currency, I suppose, But I mean, it's also possible that Detroit printing a ton of money may not work because people may not take Detroit bucks. But let's put that aside for a moment. What is the real reason why you call Greg?
Well, Sam, I contend that you and I are both libertarians. I just go a few policies further. It's a Richard Dawkins
this
quote.
is Peter
He's a
Thiel.
libertarian.
I don't consider you a libertarian at all. I consider you a nuisance. And your blood should be used to fuel my immortality experiments at best. And in my libertarian utopia, I could spray you with a laser beam out of my surgically enhanced eyesight that would liquidate you on contact.
All right, but Greg, surely you didn't call me up to tell me that you just think that we're both libertarians.
Have a good day, Greg. Bye.
Michael, is that a Peter Thiel?
No,
Actually?
come on,
Yes, that
man.
is.
Let's do it. You got to tell
That's
me.
my Peter Thiel.
You have
I don't
something-
know. I never heard of it. Maybe it is. No, I guess I called in. I'm just saying, look, another way, if you really accept with me that decentralizing things actually helps
I
people
don't.
on the ground.
I don't.
Even your first caller, look at how our country is divided, that you think that the neighbors next door are now racist, or they think that you are now a socialist that are like going to bankrupt the country.
I think
It's
that you're a
stupid. The
moron
only reason,
next door.
Wait, just go. Yeah.
The reason that we're so divided is mathematically predictable. It's because you have a central government where you have only two choices, essentially. Like you said, if you want to vote for Bernie, that is really a vote against Hillary. So all you have to do is change the ballot that you can vote for more than one candidate, and suddenly your communities will be fine. It
Right.
will, like,
Ranked
that one
choice
little
voting.
thing, right?
Ranked choice voting. Right.
Exactly. Ranked
And we
choice
should
voting.
also have
Suddenly you can vote for both.
national. We should have a national popular vote as well. And we should also have
Well, we
campaign.
can have that.
We should
I'm
have public financing. We should have public financing as well.
All right. Why not? I'm just saying local communities, that's a libertarian sort of
I mean, I
vision,
think
though. The local
maybe we
communities.
would not be so divided if we were all our own country And then we could all say, my country is not divided.
Welcome to Peter Thiele's. I'm going to kill you right now, Greg, if you ever call this show again.
But here's the good news.
That's better.
But here's the good news. Here's the good news. If Michael was his own country and you were your own country, you could both say that your countries are not divided in any way, that they're totally unified. It's just that then you'd have this other problem that there's so many countries that don't get along with me.
My
I don't want to use Michael's currency. Just saying.
You would, Greg, you would have to spend your whole country's budget on the diplomatic corps, and then it would be a problem.
I have a solution to
Michael,
your
I will
problem,
have my
Greg.
court
How about
be
we
your
cut
court.
your arms off and leave them in Jordan? It's part of the Hashemite
don't know.
kingdom.
I'll have to see about the Supreme Court of all the countries.
All right.
I'll see you in the court.
Appreciate the call, Greg.
Bring your chess clock.
Yeah, I'll see you in my court. That's right, Greg. Sure. Just keep laughing. I hope you die.
What happened to Peter Thiel? Where did he go?
He's still trying to get poor
Nefart.
kids' blood.
First off, thank you for the full irritating experience. Love this show. Don't know if I understood everything, but this interview reminds me of the show Billions, where Attorney General Chuck Rhodes takes down hedge fund manager Bobby Axelrod. I want to see more pop culture shows about going after Ayn Rand libertarian Wall Street types. Nuclear Negroid. Well, F me. I guess Kimmel doesn't have the Q rating we thought he did. If Carson had a sick baby, he would have swayed Tip O'Neill's vote. By the way, I have no credentials, and I only listen for the accents. You hear that, Kelly? Come up with some damn accents. Thames Darwin. Okay, Sam, here's a serious question. Would you rather chew on tinfoil, listen to nails on a chalkboard, or have to listen to Michael do right-wing Mandela? I mean, I guess it would depend on for how long.
Yes, Rachel.
And for how long, and you know,
Wait.
The problem is I like to mix it all up. So
I
I'd
have
like
a
to do all
question,
three.
though. Wait,
is the YouTube stream up or down, or what's going on with
The
it?
YouTube stream is fine. I'm
Okay.
looking at it right now. But wait, did he mention something about chewing tinfoil? I thought it was just nails on the board in the email.
Chewing tinfoil. Yeah. Cookie Mofo. I hereby demand that Matt be replaced with Naomi Klein immediately. Also, Tuesdays with Thomas Frank would be a great addition to the weekly routine. Sincerely, Cookie Mofo, PhD. I would suggest that this Greg should read a U.S. history book and find out why we discarded the Articles of Confederation and wrote the Constitution. We adopted a single currency. Well, let's not get carried away.
And while you're at it, kill yourself.
I watched the video this morning of John McDonnell, MP, Corbyn's shadow chancellor of the Exchequer, giving a speech in Parliament against the Iraq War in 2003. Got me thinking. We're now 17 years into the new American century. The goals of PNAC were to increase defense spending significantly, to modernize the armed forces, strengthen ties to democratic allies, and challenge regimes hostile to their interests and values, promote the cause of political and economic freedom abroad, accept the responsibility for America's unique role in preserving and extending an international order friendly to their security and prosperity and principles. So I'm just wondering, how do you think that's going?
They've done pretty well for themselves.
The low-grade conflicts seem to work out okay. Greg, have you heard about the landmark new Supreme Court decision where the government ruled they can't make you prove your innocence before you get your money back? Hopefully this will have huge repercussions on reining in civil forfeiture and police departments planning on budgets, how much money they can make. Oh, that's... no, I haven't. Send me that link, Greg. I'm interested in that. Jules, why are they all Jewish? I don't know what that is.
Who's they?
Robocall, the freeloading gobshite could also listen to Politically Reactive. It's very good. They had friend of the shows, Jeremy Scahill, not see Steve Bannon. Also, it's a local elections here in UK, so go vote. Problems with callers like this guy is he thinks his work is done the moment he votes. CPW, good news for St. Louisians. Circuit Court has lifted a injunction against the city ordinance raising the minimum wage to $10 an hour. It will take effect at midnight tonight. Will go up to $11 in 2018. Oh, that's great. There's a lot to be optimistic at the local level in the Show Me State. Between that and the state Senate passing a bill approving buyouts for homes near our local radioactive ecological disaster, the West Lake Superfund site almost makes up for the moron we just elected governor. Any chance you could have someone on about the Westlake Superfund? Gets next to no coverage locally. Is non-existent. Send me a link about it. That might be something I could do on Ring of Fire. Orange Menace, the vulgarity. Oh, the vulgarity. Stephen Colbert, so sad. Doe Link, ours push healthcare bill without input from doctors, nurses, hospitals, insurance companies, or more. If passes, look for bankruptcy of hospitals, especially community hospitals, and individuals. No scientific or economic analysis of the ACA, the results of the bill, and Congress will keep theirs. Doing it, attack first black president once again. It's Chaffetz. Colin Doucette. Trump, Bain, Klansmen, neo-Nazis, and modern robber barons. The country is yours. Trump, Bain. Okay. Although the videos show that Sterling's right hand was not in or near his right pocket, Sterling was continuing to move even after being shot 3 times and told not to move by Officer Lake, the Justice Department said. Jesus Christ, if you get shot, you'll be moving because you're in pain. Of course, the effing DOJ won't charge the officers who shot and killed Alton Sterling in Baton Rouge. Won't get charged. Sorry for cursing. I'm just mad. Yeah, I mean, do we have that video? I mean, this is what you get with the Department of Justice, where Jeff Sessions comes in and says, I'm afraid we might be leaning on the law enforcement officers just a little too much.
It's quite, I mean, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it's quite the equivalent. It's even worse in some ways of the question about Bannon being chief strategist. I mean, you have a neo-Confederate as attorney general. Even before you got to policy, which makes it worse, the signal is, don't worry about it.
Right.
Not that you were to begin with.
Right. I mean, I think it's
worse because you can direct policy.
Yeah. But of course, Bannon is why Sessions is there.
Sure is.
All right. So this is the shooting of Alton Sterling. You will see he's on the ground and supposedly reaching into his right pocket. And he's tackled for no apparent reason. He's sort of shocked. He's down on the ground. They're smushing his head into the ground. It's disturbing to watch this video, folks. You can see they've got both his arms down, literally stepping on it.
Oh, shit.
And they shot him 3 times while he was lying on the ground. Department of Justice basically saying, the handcuffs are off, boys. You do whatever you want. You know, for a long time, we basically, and one of our IMers, Militant Apathy, former police officer, was always saying that the bottom line is you need prosecutors to prosecute these cases. And when the chief prosecutor in the country, the backstop to all of this, particularly in the context of it being racially motivated, basically says, like, we're not on that beat anymore. We're going to see a lot more of this. A lot more. I mean, not that we wouldn't have seen a lot of it anyways, but I think it's going to
accelerate.
I think it's going to accelerate.
Undoubtedly.
Kevin in Tampa, I've learned my lesson. Here is the somewhat abridged version. Get your Sessions voices ready because this guy is definitely angling for a job at the DOJ. Florida Republican State Senator Dennis Baxley was a author of the Stand Your Ground law. I love the bill's sponsors. I'm not standing in their way if they find a way they can do this. I'm not on the campaign to stop it. I love black people. I love white people. It's not a racial thing for me. He is the guy who has a philosophical objection to the proposed memorial to the victims of slavery. He objected when lawmakers debated removing the word darkies from the chorus of the state song.
That was in the chorus of the Floridian state song?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ.
I would prefer to celebrate people. I don't want to celebrate defeat.
I
would rather celebrate overcoming the heartbreak of slavery. I wouldn't want to build a memorial to child abuse. I wouldn't want to build a memorial to sexual abuse. I have a discomfort about memorizing slavery. I'd like to take it in a more positive direction than a memorial to slavery. Maybe we could do one where, we extol how cotton is great because, of course, it rose to prominence because of slavery.
Many darkies
Celebrate the
enjoy cotton
positive aspect.
themselves.
Oh, yes. Or
Very stylish people.
maybe we could do a memorial to good hymnal music, right? Because slaves like to, so we could praise the good stuff that came out of it.
I'm just going to say, apropos of nothing, that I will never judge the conduct of the Cuban revolutionaries after the revolution, ever again.
Jay-Z, a strong and stable day to everyone. In all fairness, the impressions are perfectly servable for a podcast which can be listened to live at no cost, except the purportedly British accent, which is a greater abomination than the cooking of a baby goat in its mother's milk.
Suck it, sir.
Has Sam ever interviewed Yanis Varoufakis?
No.
No, we've tried, though. Didn't we try and get him a bunch of times?
Yeah, that's been.
I'm not sure if it'd be an interesting one, if only to hear Sam say his name. Lewis, 77. To Michael's Plan B comment about Alex Jones from the other day, someone should make a documentary about Jones's post-divorce life. Title it Plan B from Outer Space. Joseph Ballin, why are white helmets seen hosing down and touching all over supposed sarin gas victims' hands with their bare hands? Also, do you think Obama repeal will pass today? It's also rumors Trump will pass some religion. Well, he's not going to pass it. He's going to sign an executive order. He did. Cuddle Monkey and the Man. Michael, speaking of your your awful impressions, I was listening to some of the YouTube clips and realized that your Alex Jones sounds similar to your Rand Paul.
Yes,
Coincidence?
That's a very good point.
Fat face. Can you go over the risk you see with Cenk Uyghur's Article 5 convention? I don't see any personally. I'm just a fart face. The biggest is that with Republican control of nearly 2/3 of all the state houses, with these conferences called, and I'm just going to do this broadly. One, you don't have control over the delegates. I mean, supposedly you do, but we don't know if you do. And two, you don't have control over the agenda at these things. You might, but you might not. So you might get, let's say, a balanced budget amendment. And balanced budget amendment and even, let's say, maybe both go back, right? That's the deal. Balanced budget amendment and corporations aren't people. Let's just say those two things go back to the state houses. Well, you got 2/3 that are dominated by Republicans. Let's say they pass just the balanced budget amendment. Let's say they pass just both and the balanced budget amendment. The balanced budget amendment is basically like, I mean, in some respects would have the impact of, destroying our social safety net. I mean, that's the way that would be used. So all of those things that you hope will happen by people or not, by corporations or not people, won't necessarily happen. That's the danger. Denver Dave. Sam, I would love to subscribe at a not a member level. If I do, what sound can I expect you to play on air to unthank me? Can I suggest game show noise like one from Match Game? Leader or leave? Sam, in a recent interview, Hillary said she was ready to join the resistance. She had 14 million followers and has said absolutely nothing about the Affordable Care Act, the AHCA. If she doesn't show up today to mobilize her voters to call Congress, is it fair to say she should go home and stop pretending to be a progressive advocate?
I have more things to say about James Comey, that motherfucker. I have nothing on health care. Russia, 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 Russia. It was their fault.
Marty Rose, 22. Great interview today, Sam. I always learn something new from your show. That pompous prick who sent you that email wants to complain about the show but refuses to pay a membership or Patreon? Unbelievable. Love your impressions, Michael.
Thank you.
Billy Buckner. On behalf of those offering constructive criticism to Michael, cut down on talking over guests and Kelly or Matt as soon as they start to say something that he has an addendum to. Mondays are a challenge when he keeps piping up with his 5 to 6 word impulse and throws off his guests. Saying, please continue, doesn't restore the rhythm and paragraph style presentation I enjoy most about the show. Impulse control, please, Michael.
Who wrote that?
Billy Buckner. I thought
Billy
that was
Buckner.
gonna be a joke.
No, there's no joke. Billy Buckner. Billy Buckner has been a long-standing note taker.
Well, I mean, the guy let the ball go through
wait,
his
I'm
legs.
sorry, I
and
didn't hear
destroyed
that.
the '86 World Series. So, Calvin BW. Hey, Samantha, as a paying listener, I'd really appreciate it if you'd stop cutting off Michael during his impressions. Camp. Tom MacArthur is my congressman. Sorry about the MacArthur Amendment, everyone. Tried to vote him out of office, but the Democratic Party is extremely underfunded on the Jersey Shore. M. DeWitt. Have you heard of the economist Kate Raworth? Audience may enjoy hearing her on her show. Her economics are like Richard Wolff's. We should also have Richard Wolff on again. A long time ago. Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Gabe from Chicago.
Gabe, what's on your mind?
Hey, man. So I wanted to talk to you about something that you covered yesterday, the press budget call.
Yes.
Where it started going all wonky.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you were talking about it, you said that it was like you assumed that it was like either a person who like just left their hold music on, or B, like just someone like a reporter or something, someone from the press messing with the call. But I think there's a third option that you didn't list, which was that it's like Steve Bannon or whoever, just somebody from the administration sitting on the call with a tape deck, monitoring the call and basically starting to play audio and start messing with it to kind of play him off.
It did sound like someone was playing him off.
That somebody was just trying to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, in the main, I would say that's a crazy, crazy idea, and I would hang up on you immediately. But I have to say that none of that would surprise me at this point.
So I've like pretty good evidence on this, right? First of all, it can't be conference music because you hear the music, the volume of the music. You hear the volume of the music start to get louder as the call goes on, which that wouldn't happen if it was conference music, so it definitely can't be that. Also, it simultaneously starts, and Mick Mulvaney starts fuzzing out at exactly the same moment. Like, that would be a ridiculous coincidence. Also, it started happening as the reporters started asking about Trump's tweets.
I mean, look,
which, as you know, is a sensitive topic.
It's possible. I mean, it's. Go ahead.
One last thing. The next day, they hold like a follow-up briefing, and Sean Spicer like runs out of the briefing after he, gives the briefing, basically not giving anyone time for any questions, which is highly unusual. So I think they just didn't want to talk about whatever those reporters wanted to talk about.
I mean, it's possible. That's very, very possible. I just think that if there's anybody who would have done that type of thing, Bannon strikes me as the guy who would do it.
It's a total Bannon.
Yeah.
Maybe Shmuley told him to do it. He's like, what you do is you play them, you interrupt.
I appreciate the call. I mean, it's very possible. We're never going to know.
Don't you think there's a lot of ludicrous conspiracy theories that you would never buy into until these people?
A lot of them, when they're just like they're so dumb and that like normally people wouldn't think it was worthwhile, but Bannon I think would play Yankee Doodle over a call. Like McMulvaney was
that sounds
bombing.
Very Bannon.
Josh IMs me on the producer emeritus line. Oh wow. Yep. Haven't watched the show on video for a while. Are you sitting in a French pharmacy?
Huh.
And then I said, you haven't seen it in a really long time because this backdrop. And then he wrote back, no, I've seen it before. I just came up with a joke and I needed a setup.
Fair enough. Where is Josh these days?
Apparently vacationing in France. Hugo Ball. Hello, Sam. PhD from Sonoma State in a liturgical dance gets me a very considerable discount at Saul's Deli in the Berkeley and the nights I perform there for tips with my klezmer troupe. So I'm very, very safe endorsing Michael in all his endeavors. Social Jewish warrior. What are your thoughts on a wealth cap or maximum income? I mean, I think that we don't need to impose that. We just need to raise the top marginal tax rates. I mean, you could argue we had that during the Eisenhower era when the top marginal tax rate was about 90% over, at that time, I think it was $470,000, maybe it was $400,000, which today I think would be about $3 million in today's dollars. And I think, yeah, every dollar you make over $3 million, I mean, sure, I'm gonna feel that pinch, but I would, you pay 90 cents on it.
I do support a wealth cap.
But why wealth cap as opposed to just sort of
because
like
of the philosophical
a tax?
point. I mean, functionally, it would be performed through a tax, but I actually think that there's value in stating that there just shouldn't be a possibility of having above a maximum income. I think that there's actually value in laying down a marker on that.
It would change the way we look at high earners too, because anybody who's like, it's like, well, it would stop me from working. Well, I don't care if like a lot of these rich guys are continuing to work, but like the people who would continue, it would basically be volunteering through their job they're doing already to just give money to the state.
No, I think that there's a certain. I think that.
I mean, if it's good enough for Donald Trump, who's volunteering his time.
Actually, I'm sure that Donald Trump, until maybe now, has never earned at what I would consider a maximum income level.
What would you consider a maximum income level?
That's a good. You know what?
Where would you put that cap, Mister?
Say $5 million a year.
Chairman Mao.
Say $5 million a year. 10 million. 5 million.
You're gonna upset
$5 million and 10 million.
A lot of athletes.
That's a different. That's
it's a different category.
That's double.
It's double. That's correct.
So you just drop it anywhere.
I mean, you could go really expansive and say nobody should make above $1 billion, but then that starts only affecting a handful of people, essentially.
I mean, I have no problem. I mean, I guess
I'm less interested in the minutia of like the number and the policy, and more that there might be just some value in saying that. You know, I think that like you're laying a marker down in some ways.
Okay.
Like functionally, what you said is basically how it would play out. If you do tax above a certain rate, post what, and you said would be after 3 million, you get 90%.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Yeah. MR members, 5 hours of Civil War talk. Sign me up, JK. Ivana Tinkle. I don't know how people can call this show irritating. News in general is dry, unlike Sam, who willingly consumes this stuff dry. He's the Richard Dawkins of politics. Mostly negative,
really
especially these days. When I hear Gorka or Carson or Kelly laugh, it's like a morphine to a broken arm. Can't get better outlet for these shitty times. Well, that's very sweet.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Let's go to the phones. You're calling from a 509 area code. Calling from a 509 area code.
Sam.
Yes. Yes. Who's this and where are you calling from? Ronald Reagan. How are you, Ronald Reagan?
Good. I agree with that first caller. The last week and a half of shows have been really good. Not like in isolation, but in compared to the shows before it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So as long as your trajectory is going in the right way, that's really the bottom line.
Right. You know, the shows recently have really actually, the reason I've liked them so much is because your show has a way of shaping my worldview and getting me to change the way I view things. So I've had certain aspects of my worldview flip like 180, and Kelly did that the other day with Alex Jones for me. I feel like you guys were way too hard on him, and now I see him as, you know, really somebody to look up to. And I started to think,
is that right?
I listened to your show, and I don't even know really how much of an alpha male you are. I know you talk about like woodworking and stuff, but like, have you ever fought a guy?
Have I ever fought a guy? But I've been beat up.
Yeah.
I've been beat up.
No, well.
Does that not count? Oh, you mean if I beat up somebody?
Who started the fight?
Huh?
Yeah. With your bare hands.
I mean.
Preferably before you were 15.
Before I was 15? I mean, I got.
Yeah.
At a beach party once, the town commissioner, son, the police commissioner's son, roughed me up a little bit.
Stop hitting me.
Okay. That sounds like the opposite of alpha. Amy Goodman stabbed a guy in college. So,
They
Does
passed.
Amy
my-
Goodman need to cut someone?
Did they just pass the bill? Do you know what
I just
the?
feel like
Yeah,
there's a
looks like they did.
membership. There's a membership on the line right now, and I'm trying to find out. I don't know.
mean, if you're worried whether or
It
not
doesn't
I could
seem like
take
you're
you, I
that-
feel pretty confident about it. It's go time, buddy. Meet. Where are you?
Oh.
Let's meet somewhere. Somewhere probably around Kansas. All right,
Okay.
neutral territory.
Sounds good.
Go time.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to talk super quick because I got to jump. But one thing I've noticed with people who have, who work at in the service industry and things, they don't even seem to really quite understand that organizing is a thing. It's so far outside of the mindset of most Americans. There's a cafe I go to, they don't have a tip line on their receipts. And I keep bugging them about it, and they'll say, well, that's a lot of extra work for the owner because he has to do math at the end of the day. And, these people are leaving hundreds of dollars on the table because most people don't carry around cash anymore for tipping. It would be really easy. This is the last thing I'll say. I'm a job creator. I don't know if you want to drop a shofar there, but I'm a job creator. And my life would be totally ruined if my employees went on strike. And most employees don't realize that
they have the power
the amount of power that they have over their employer. And I hear this stuff all the time. Oh, well, we can't, even with my employees, I
People don't like conflict.
Collectively bargain.
People don't.
Yeah, that's true.
People don't like conflict. I mean, I know. Listen, I don't know how serious you are about this, but I think that if people in that context, you get people who don't think they're going to be at that job for very long, right? And so they want to make it less. They don't want to make it difficult. But you're right. I mean, there's no reason why the employees can't all go en masse, say to the boss, look. We want to make it easier for us to get tips, not harder. So it makes this job better for us, and we feel more invested in it. And then if he doesn't do it, then then you start thinking well, all right, maybe we just don't all show up. But you all get fired. I mean, that's the problem.
Well, I mean, honestly, most places couldn't really afford to just fire everybody. They'd have to concede, and that's my point. Is people think that that's what's going to happen, but that there's no way that would happen in a cafe that employs 10 or 15 people. They're not going to just go back to square one and rehire people. But I think it's just so far out of people's minds. With my employees, I try and get them to collectively bargain. I'll say get together and come back to me and let me know how many vacation days you think is fair, and they'll say whatever you think. Even when the boss is telling them to collectively bargain, they won't. And so, anyways, I think your show is a good source of lefty wokeism and getting people to realize that sort of thing. So
yeah,
I was joking about the show being bad earlier. I like you guys.
Oh, well, thanks.
Okay, bye.
That's very nice. Ronald Reagan with a good point. I mean, I think people need to be more conscious of the power they do have as in withholding their labor or threatening to withhold their labor. I mean, Michael has been withholding labor almost for the entire time that he's been here.
If only
it's been very effective.
If only it were so.
It's been very, very effective.
What has it been effective in?
You haven't done the labor. Calling from a 336 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Really?
336?
Hello, this is Juan. Hello, this is Juan.
Hi, Juan. Where are you calling from?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm calling from Macon County in North Carolina. I think that your Bush-like penchant for malapropism blinds you to an important point about the Comey hearings.
Okay.
Okay. Nauseous versus nauseated. Now, he said he was mildly nauseous. Now, casually, both of them are used to mean feeling unwell. But purists like me thinks nauseous means causing nausea. while nauseated means feeling sick. And I think in that context, Comey is really telling the truth. He is really causing us all to kind of throw up.
Ah, that's a very good point. He was being a little sneaky about it. He was actually saying, like, I'm causing you agita rather than being agitated.
Exactly.
Boom.
That's
right.
all I have for you today.
Appreciate
That's
the
the
call.
benefits of English composition education.
Deep.
Well, I just forgot the nauseated. But if he had said, like, I'm feeling mildly, agitating, I would have picked up on that immediately. All right, let's take one more phone call. You calling from a 215 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, this is Sean from Harrisburg.
What's up, Sean?
Not much, just calling in to say hi. And I was wondering if you guys have been seeing what's been happening in Pennsylvania with the conservative takeover we've been witnessing.
No. What are you talking about? On a states' rights or what?
No, it's in our state legislature, inside our General Assembly, and how next year we have a governor's race coming up, and it'll probably be the most important race in the United States.
Wow.
With like the state level. We have a person running for governor who wants to turn the state into a right-to-work state. It's a millionaire, garbage owner, trash company owner, and he's actually a state senator right now, right near us in Harrisburg. And he's really hell-bent on turning the state into a right-to-work paradise.
Who is that?
The guy's name is Senator Scott Wagner.
And
he was a conservative.
Is Wolf going to run for re-election?
Yes, but it seems like Wolf is kind of like a boring middle-of-the-road Democrat.
Right.
And it seems like it's ripe for Wolf to get taken out of office with this senator running for governor. He's a self-funded millionaire. He's pretty much bought the whole entire Senate for himself, dumping hundreds of thousands of dollars into Senate elections. He's responsible for ousting our former Senate president, who was also a Republican. And it just seems like it's like one of the things that's flying under the radar.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a little scary. This is a 2018 election?
Yes. And one of the things that like Wagner's been doing is he's literally like been emailing his supporters about, he's running on this Trump ticket, and he has also had lunch with DeVos. He's telling his constituents and his supporters that he's had lunch with Betsy DeVos. He's done things to lay off state workers by holding up certain funding bills, and it seems like we might have a right to work state by this time in 2018 inside the northeastern part of the United States.
Horrible. Well, people got to pay more attention to it. I mean, we'll. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's. Let's see, who's running for. Who's up for re-election in the Senate in Pennsylvania? Anybody?
Bob Casey is, and so far we have a couple members in the State House running. Rick Saccone, who's a crazy religious conservative out of Western PA. There's another younger up-and-coming conservative, Christiana, but also Lou Barletta might be running for U.S. Senate this time as well. It seems like he's going to throw his hat in the primary race.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's not like Casey is bringing out people, a subset of people who would, you want out of the Senate candidate to be bringing out people who would not be inclined to vote for the state senator, right? And that doesn't strike me as the case, but we'll see. I don't know. That's tough. I appreciate you putting it on our radar.
No problem. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks. All right, folks, don't have any more time for calls. Apologies. We'll take a couple more IMs, and then we will wrap this up. We should tell you that the House has voted And it appeared in his past, right? I don't know what the vote tally was. Pretty amazing. Rob Quist just tweeted out the D.C. healthcare bill gives a massive tax cut to millionaires while jacking up premiums for Montanans. I would stand with you and vote no. It's going to be interesting to see. This guy's election is in 20 days.
217 voted for it. I think 214 against it.
It's pretty close. That is also indicative that they basically released every Republican they could, which was not many. Because this is a bad vote for people to take. I think they know it. All right, let's take some IMs. Hopefully this thing gets caught up in the Senate. I mean, there's an argument that Mitch McConnell doesn't want to deal with this at all.
Manchin has actually said that it's dead in the Senate. So, who knows?
We'll see. You know,
Certainly.
a week ago it looked like it was dead in the House, too.
Sure did. That's right.
Anthony from Baltimore, the Gorka or ooh noise makes me imagine Steve Bannon swinging by Gorka's office and saying, "Hey, Seabass, got some fresh donuts here." Then Gorka would grin, peer into the box of donuts, extend his arm, wiggle his fingers, or boo, as he grabs a fresh donut and continues to work on making advances on data visualization techniques.
Very few less pleasant donut servers than Steve Bannon.
Shoo. How many emails or IMs you get are just blind, fuming hatred with or without racial or anti-Semitic slurs? Not as many as you would think, because after a while I engage with them too much, and I think it just doesn't have the same impact. I think, people, when they send stuff like that, when they send really hateful stuff, they really want people to be afraid as opposed to, like, totally engaged and entertained and feeling like it's a brief respite from the incredible monotony of their family life.
You know what? When we get emails like that, Sam is like, it's like the Trump sketch. He goes, an anti-Semitic email. Goody, goody, goody. Did you see that? Did you see that? They're threatening to kill us. They called us dirty Jews. They called us dirty Jews. Isn't that unbelievable? I'm going to respond to it. Get into a whole long.
I hope someday a big anti-Semite comes.
I hope there's a
really
bigger
big
email,
one.
a really big one that hates us even more.
Really cool. If Michael doesn't increase his impressions of right-wing Mandela and Gorka, I'll have to pull my membership. Let's see. I'm kind of pretty sure I was planning to join, after freebie listening for the first 4 years. We're all our own private Idahos, are we not? Did I just hear you say Sank Uger? What are you, in French pharmacy and something? Oh, man. DMC. Hey, Sam, you think you were a little harsh on Jimmy Kimmel over the past couple of days on 2 counts? I think you were. Firstly, speaking as a father whose son has tetralogy of Fallot, I can guarantee you the nuances of political discourse definitely escape you in those first horrible. Without a doubt. Look, yeah, okay. Secondly, I loved your utilitarian arguments to the Jimmy Dores of this world, framing a vote for Hillary as a vote against the Trump agenda. So if Jimmy Kimmel's story raises consciousness of the importance of universal coverage, maybe just write it off as a small net advance for civility and empathy and give the guy a break. Keep up the good work, you grouchy cuck. Yeah, no, I think that's legitimate. I mean, I didn't mean to, and I kept prefacing it by saying I don't want to be too critical of him, but that construction is somewhat problematic, and people have to understand the implications of their vote. But yes, I have a tremendous amount of sympathy for him. And Ryan from Ohio, do we know what ended up happening with Jesse Waters? Do we? SBG just sort of has melted away.
Yeah, that vacation's lasting a bit longer than I thought it was supposed to.
Do you see that Obama recorded an endorsement from Macron? I haven't seen it. I'm not terribly surprised, but Petrus, no surprise that many reps haven't read the health care bill. While this negligence would be fatal in most professions, note that Dem and GOP parties are private entities that possess some public attributes. As of this date, elected individuals do not have a fiduciary responsibility to their constituencies. This relationship needs to change, in my view. Harvard Law Review, among others, have published articles supporting this change. Your opinion? I mean, I think, back of envelope, I am in favor of it. I mean, that seems rather hard to determine on some level. But, Petrus, I would be giving anything to hear a conversation between Merkel, Lagarde, and Tiffany at the W20. Pixlaw, could you guys do a show on labor and Brexit? Because I'm seeing loads of conflicting write-outs on Corbyn et al. I'm kind of confused about it. Sounds like something that Michael would do in his foreign policy show. Trump's hair makes me mildly nauseous. The fact that he's president gives me... Okay, you. Muggy D. Jones. Looks like here in St. Louis, the minimum wage is being raised to $10. They were talking about how you can notify officials if an employer isn't following the rules and penalties. That being the case, if your employer isn't following the rules and rat on them, they lose their license and then no one gets a job. How do cities already have a higher wage deal with that dilemma, or is it even a problem? I think the threat of it, makes most people, snap to attention. All right, Matt, Michael, let's do this. You get 3 picks each. Go.
E.
Let's see. It's tough. We got a lot of them today. Give me another one.
P.
P, indeed. P, indeed. Politics drawn poorly. Case of beer being deceived to capitals. GOP is literally celebrating the eliminating of health care for 24 million Americans. Apparently it's Bud Light. I mean, if you're going to celebrate thousands of your fellow citizens dying prematurely due to lack of health care, you might want to step up the beer. Oh, wait a second. I forgot who our president was. CNBC reporting GOP Obamacare replacement bill would protect just 5% of people with pre-existing conditions. Wow. ACH passed 2017 to 30. The video of Dems chanting goodbye to Republicans. Is that right? Holy cow. Is that... I mean, I think there might have been some... Here you go. Here it is. Matt, here it is. Yep. I mean, there is definitely an argument that is going to hurt them at the ballot box, but I mean, hopefully it doesn't get passed in the Senate. Let's see. See if this is accurate.
Immediately after the vote, Nia, it looks the Republicans have it.
Yeah, they did, and it looks like those 2 Democrats who had looked like they voted for it changed their mind, probably a mistake there, and we'll see what this president says in terms of the messaging. It's a big moment for him, so many doubts in those first 100 days that he could get something done, and now he has.
All right, let's listen to the floor of the House.
Wow. Democrats just taunting the Republicans.
This is a Republican
in the House. Wow. So 217 Republicans voting yes, 20 voting no, 192 Democrats voting against. There were 2 no votes, 1 Republican, 1 Democratic. I assume they couldn't be there or something to that effect. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Neff, does Comey have a lap? He's so very tall. Maybe his legs fold differently. No lap, sad. Michael.
D.
D. Doug F. Majal. I can tell you why Greg called. There's a photo of Trump standing at a podium 2 feet from a Palestinian flag. Chris Burdick. In defense of those women who wore KKK robes to the Jeff Sessions hearing, they were just trying to make him feel at home. Matt.
M.
M indeed. M-H. Problem with Greg's application of MMT is that individual states and locales don't have the real resources at their disposal the United States does. Indeed. Yes. Michael.
A.
A is like your go-to, isn't it?
Yes.
Attorney Andrew. Some are reporting that the Dems are chanting, yes, no, hey, goodbye. Also hate to relitigate the election, but you know who could have helped Kimmel voice the truth about Republicans wanting sick, poor people to die? Hillary Clinton. But she said Paul Ryan was one of the good ones.
Yes, that's true. Well, he didn't cost me the election. It was goddamn Russia.
Johnny Gagan Cookie. One of them D.C. madam gals laughed at me once. You should have seen what I did to her. Matt.
T.
T. Everybody gets a little clever with this. Maybe sometimes too clever. Try a different one. Call waiting. Pennsylvania State Senator roughed up a videographer tracking his speeches at a country club. Video documents he's a Trumpian scumbag, but rough around the edges. Go ahead, Matt.
D.
D. Dawn 88. Sam, can this be stopped in the Senate with a filibuster, or will the Republicans use reconciliation and a straight party vote? I believe this is going to be done under reconciliation. So I don't think a filibuster will be able to stop it in the Senate. But it's a tough vote for them to make. And it's going to get worse. These guys didn't even know what it was, and it was a tough vote for them to make.
Right.
I don't think there's anything in this bill that is going to be better than it was 2 weeks ago, and now there's going to be time. But they just wanted to kick it to the Senate because they didn't want their base to be mad at them. I think this
But
is
everywhere you are, you got to harass these people relentlessly.
Without a
but
doubt.
the most, what I mean, Maine, get on Susan Collins constantly.
Big time.
Jeff Flake.
Big time.
Who's the guy in Nevada?
Heller.
And I also Portman. I think those are the four that are the most vulnerable.
Imagine you're a Macedonian teenager and go after those people.
Who was the last? Okay,
It was
Matt,
him.
Michael, last one.
F.
F. Give me one other.
B.
Blackjack Leo. Great deal at Sherry's Berries. My family will love it. They even had Lord Salisbury's, but I stayed with the Mother's Day special. And the final I am of the day will come from Libtard. Do you think O'Reilly's more upset about losing a show, or that everyone knows how gross women think he is? Probably the former. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie.